Her smile.
Don't leave.
It's a promise.
Don't go.
Picture this. You've admired art your entire life, sketching, drawing, and painting whenever you can. At the age of 20, you leave your home country to attend the International Art Academy of your dreams in England. However, your parents will only let you stay on one condition. You must become number one within 6 months. Your talent is exceptional. Your effort is diligent. But try as you might, you're hard stuck at rank 2. That's because the rank 1 is an eccentric talent, unshackled by the desire to be the best, and unshackled by societal pressure and what others think of him. Instead, he only thinks of besting himself and painting the most beautiful things he can see. Now, you're caught in his periphery. He won't leave you alone, wanting to see all the beautiful sights with you, paint with you, and because of the time you spend with him, the art you imagine grows in ways you never expected. Words never seem to come out right for the two of you. Maybe that's why your feelings only seem to come out right in your colorful works. Love through a prism. In the early 20th century, the steamboat blared its horn. Lily Ichijoin jolted up, slamming her way through the deck hall to make it outside to see the beautiful view approaching this unfamiliar land. So that's England, she said with awe. On the Great British Isles, our story takes place in the bustling city of London. There were cars, people walking all around, and a particular blonde-haired boy caught a glimpse of Lily's approaching ship. Arriving, Lily began taking it all in. The Suzukis assumed she must be tired after a long trip, but it was truly a pleasure traveling with her. Lily thanked them for keeping her company, not used to all the people constantly walking in front of her. Apparently, today was particularly lively because there was a parade to commemorate the former queen's birthday. Lily found it so impressive that this land was ruled by a woman. She waved the Suzukis off and began trying to find where she was to go. She paced back and forth, getting nowhere because the sheet of paper wasn't enough for her. I don't blame her. I honestly can't step outside my house without Google Maps. She tried asking a man for some help, but got too intimidated by its presence. She couldn't believe everyone here was so tall, especially since, in Japan, she was considered tall for a woman. What is she, like 5'3", 5'4"? Lily tried asking more people for help, but everyone was too busy. A strong wind would blow her paper away, and unfortunately, fall into the River Thames. By the way, the Brits have the worst pronunciation for things. Thames is spelled Thames. Why is it not Thames? Look at this word. They say Leicester and not Leicester. They don't say Gloucestershire, but instead Gloucestershire. They speak so poshly like in Harry Potter, but say all the other stuff so weird. That's why you gotta stick with American pronunciation. Obviously, we say it right. Lily deflated watching her paper float away. That was her only guidance here, but remained positive because she at least knew the name of her destination. She turned to see a boy vigorously scribbling with charcoal for his art, drawing a depiction of a bird. She was amazed by his speed. She apologized for the intrusion and told him it was her first time in London. She didn't know her way around. She wanted to board the coach to St. Thomas Art Academy. Suddenly, her stomach growled and her face glowed bright red. He offered what he had in his hand to eat, but she obviously wasn't going to eat that. He'd been using it to erase charcoal. She wasn't expecting him to suddenly start eating it. Ugh. He told her to get lost, and she stormed off, furious, only to stop with him explaining to walk 2 blocks and turn left. Where she needed to go was next to Alex and Son. She thanked him and took off. Making her way there, the coachman would call out to her. Riding inside, she finally got to enjoy more of the sights. Tons of buildings foreign to her, and a big clock tower. It all truly met her fancy. She was welcomed at the academy by the oil painting teacher, Charles Brandt. He went on to explain they were a venerable art academy, attended by royalty and nobility. They not only focused on technique, but also on developing the expressive qualities of each student, with the goal of producing artists whose names would spread around the globe. and she was here to represent her country as a student of painting. He expected maximum effort. The headmaster heard a lot about her from her previous teacher. Mr. Hayashi claimed Lily had exceptional talent, and that sending her here was worth the investment of state funds. Professor Brandt cut in, reminding the headmaster that surviving their academy was no easy matter. Lily's talent was of no concern. The only thing that mattered was whether her art would have an impact on the world. Next to enter was Dorothy Brown, here to welcome the new transfer student, but could now see she had to deal with her eccentric professor again. While he clamored on about platitudes and Shakespeare, Dorothy took Lily's things and they went on their way. Dorothy got excited showing Lily around. The campus was huge. There was the sculpture classroom and stained glass classes on the opposite courtyard. The hugeness wasn't the most amazing part though. What Dorothy enjoyed most was that whether nobility or common folk, man or woman, everyone studied in the same classroom as equals. It was quite rare in this time period. The founder's motto was, "Art is for all. Art is the world's only universal language." Is this true, guys? My pretentious mathematics professor used to tell me, you can't ride a bike without calculus. Dorothy was eager for a future generation where women also stepped forward. Lily was excited to do her best, but was intimidated by the idea of a true challenge coming ahead. Dorothy detailed sketching, core subjects, and joint lectures with other schools. There was a lot to do. The critique sessions were the hardest of all. Next, Lily was shown the gallery. It contained precious artworks from all around the world. It was closed for the day, but usually open to the public. Lily would fixate on the artworks from the critique sessions. The best pieces selected were exhibited here. Lily read aloud first place, Kit Church. Dorothy claimed he was truly a genius and already had a number of patrons. The undisputed #1 of their graduating class. But forget all that. There was something Dorothy was dying to ask Lily. Did she have shuriken? Dorothy thought Lily was a samurai, and that all Japanese come from samurai families. Lily is being racially profiled. Lily tried to clear the misconception, but Dorothy cut her off, promising she wouldn't tell anyone Lily's secret. Because if people found out, Lily would have to commit harakiri, or honorable self-end. Some other girls would call Dorothy over, ending this embarrassing moment because they needed help with homework. Lily used that time to escape. She couldn't believe that was how Japanese people were seen here. She'd stumble on a classroom filled with paintings of a flower vase, and thought back to her mother quizzing her. Lily knew the name of the tallest mountain and the longest river in Japan, but couldn't seem to answer the names of the second tallest and second longest. Her mother made it clear that to be #1 meant your name was etched into history and the minds of the people. #2 was always forgotten, as Lily just illustrated. The mother reluctantly permitted Lily to go to England, but remained opposed. She thought at Lily's age, she should be thinking of marriage. The mother's wish was for Lily to inherit the family's Ichijoen kimono boutique. She told Lily she could not devote all her time to art alone. Her best match would be a second son, one of diligent character. Her children should be born in order of boy, girl, boy. Yeesh. Talk about Asian tiger mom. Holy. Also, I'm pretty sure you can't control the order of gender born. The father tried to ease things up, but the mother silenced him. She made it clear Lily's studies abroad would last 6 months. Lily needed to become #1 in that time. Otherwise, she'd have to return home. The whole memory occurred while she nodded off in the classroom. She woke up to the boy from before, going through her luggage. He was examining her unusual fabric. She got embarrassed because this was her koshimaki, which is apparently some type of waist undergarment worn under kimonos. Dorothy came rushing over, hearing Lily scream. Lily needed help. She thought this guy was some kind of pervert. Dorothy scolded Kit, reminding him not to go through people's things. With him getting up, Lily caught a full glimpse of Kit Church's pretty face. This oddball was in fact the undisputed #1. The guys told him that was no way to treat a lady, but he told them he tried calling out to her. She just wouldn't wake up. Hearing he was playing hooky at the waterfront, Lily remembered exactly who he was. That weirdo who ate charcoal-covered bread. The guys told him he needed to stop doing that. It was bad for his health. But Kit didn't want to. Seeing him sloven and yawning, Lily swore she'd never let a guy like him beat her. And liking the video and subscribing to my channel, because here on my Shoujo Weekly, I'm certainly an indulger of the fine arts. look at some of the beautiful fan art I've collected during my time as a content creator. Wow, I love seeing artists work. I don't know how this happened, but 3 out of the 4 girls I've dated turned out to be drawing artists. And the one who couldn't draw was on the dance team with years of continued piano performance on a state level. I think deep in my soul, there's a desire to shackle a beautiful woman of the arts within a birdcage and watch her work. Oops, I let the darkness out. Shh, shh, don't worry. Keep drawing, do your chores, sleep, and rest well. All to the wonderful and beautiful stories in Shoujo that I tell. Lily sat on the cliff, shrieking in horror as the flaming demon #1 undisputed legendary King Kit blazed before her. She thought he was Satan himself. He taunted, "How unfortunate that you came all the way from Japan for nothing. You'll be sent home in no time," as he generated an art piece with flawless shading, a piece with unparalleled precision of form. He offered to teach her how to defeat him, as long as she ate his charcoaled bread. She woke up panting from that nightmare, questioning why she dreamt about him. What was wrong with her? She needed to snap out of it. Her first day of school should be special. Getting up, she washed her face, brushed her teeth, got completely ready. Dorothy could see Lily was wearing the outfit she bought yesterday and thought it suited her as well as her kimono did. For breakfast, Diana, their boarding mother, presented one of the most disgusting pies I have ever seen. What the fuck is this? It's apparently called Stargazy pie. And man, this pie has some cool lore. Originating from the village of Mousehole, it's traditionally eaten at Tom Bawcock's Eve, December 23rd, to commemorate a fisherman who saved the village from starvation during a harsh winter. The heads and tails poking out give the appearance of gazing at the stars. Would you guys try it? Lily somehow started eating it, as Diana kept nicely hounding her to try. Dorothy saved her with the fact they had to go. They changed into what Dorothy called bloomers. Lily was so excited to be wearing pants. She's never worn anything this close to men's clothing. She thought England was so advanced. They needed these pants so they could ride their new bikes. A thrilling new experience for Lily, since in Japan during this time period, it was considered unbecoming for women to ride them. Also, only the rich could afford them. Sam told her to maybe get some practice first, but Lily insisted she was a natural athlete, only to crash the next second over. So, she'd ride on the back of Dorothy's bike. Arriving on campus, Dorothy waved over to Kit and Peter. Lily jolted back, seeing the #1. Kit stared at her and uttered her hair and face bore an uncanny resemblance to Aphrodite. Thinking of the sculpture, this made Lily blush. However, Dorothy couldn't see the resemblance at all. But they both had it wrong. Aphrodite was actually the name of his horse. Lily couldn't believe that guy. She thought he was so rude. First, he offered her black bread. Then, he went through her things, and now he called her a horse? Dorothy promised he didn't mean harm. Kit just blurted out whatever came to mind. Everyone stared when they entered the classroom. Professor Brandt introduced her as the girl who came all the way from Japan to study oil painting. She was incredibly courteous with Japanese mannerisms. The men thought her bow was unusual. The ladies spoke of unusual Japanese cuisine, such as raw fish, and also speculated on the idea of spoiled beans, and maybe even worms. Dorothy told Lily not to worry. Meeting a Japanese person was rare here, and the particular girls that gossiped were known as the 3 S's. Stacy, Shirley, and Sarah. Stacy was after George in sculpture, Shirley was after Arthur, and Sarah had her eye on Thomas from stained glass. There were a lot of nobles in their school. Plenty of girls were more interested in future husbands than art. Everyone started getting nervous hearing today's theme of the expressive faces of the sky. Then, the professor recited the Shakespeare quote, "The peace of heaven is theirs that lifted their swords." The assignment had nothing to do with Shakespeare. Professor Brandt just liked quoting him. He made a quick turn, declaring they had 3 hours. Any size, but they must use oil paint. Their works would be assessed over the weekend, and the top 3 would be displayed in the lecture hall. The classmates all wore their painting garbs as they got to work. Lily stared up at the sky, thinking about the challenge unfolding. She tried to interpret the meaning. Was the expression of sky faces the aftermath of rain, the crisp air, the drifting clouds? Arthur would startle her with a sudden greeting. He was from Liverpool. He wanted to know if she'd heard of the Carteret family. Of course, she hadn't. Didn't matter to him though. He closed in to ask if she'd like to see a cool spot where she could paint. One where the 2 of them could be alone. and she ran away immediately. The three S's were observing from a tree over, calling her a rotten Japanese girl for already flirting. Thinking she must know Arthur was from a baron's family, they were going to show her pecking order. Lily, meanwhile, couldn't get over how forward people were here. The three girls came her way, and as she stepped to avoid their path, Stacy bumped right into her, knocking her over. She apologized, going, "Oh, pardon me. I must have tripped on something." They shortly helped pick her things up, and as she left, the three hated her false modesty. Shirley had taken Lily's cobalt blue in secrecy. With Lily getting set up, she noticed Kit's canvas was on the ground rather than an easel, despite the fact this assignment was about the sky. She couldn't understand what he was staring at, but decided to focus up. She started to squirm, unable to find her blue, and the three bullies took notice with much enjoyment. It started to bother Kit to the point he couldn't focus. While Lily was melting down, thinking she was going to return home, he tossed some blue paint at her head. But when she went to look, he was back working. It was lapis lazuli ultramarine. She'd never seen a pigment this expensive. She bowed towards Kit to thank him, and began her work, using whites and this new blue to depict the sky. Her next dream was a vivid shoujo, as she asked if she could really use Kit's blue paint. He let her use as much as she wanted, as long as she ate his black bread! Another morning of waking up from a nightmare, bags under her eyes. Dorothy was impressed by Lily's bike riding. All that practice on Sunday paid off. The two would see the results in the gallery. Peter Anthony, 3rd. Lily Ichijoen, 2nd. And Kit Church, 1st. His painting reflected the sky from a puddle. Everyone was so impressed by Kit's work. They all looked up while he stared towards the ground. Peter compared Kit's eyes to a prism. Just as a prism bends and scatters light, he thought Kit's eyes saw iridescent scenes they couldn't. Even more surprising, his sky didn't have a trace of blue. He used violet as a base. That's how he finished so fast. The days went by with Lily feeling her inadequacy. Professor Brandt complimented her work as elegant, worthy of a passing grade. But how she painted now, her work was like the exemplars used to teach children, not that of an artist. Her by-the-book approach had no allure in the world of art. He told her to consider why Shakespeare's plays were loved by the masses and apply that to her paintings. Trying to push herself, she declined the invite to hang out with her friends at the pub for the evening. Kit, meanwhile, was fixated on Lily's paintings. Lily, still thinking on what Brandt had told her while she continued to practice. She knew he was right. That's why she came here to learn, despite her mother's objections. She was surprised to find Kit trying to talk to her. He wanted to use her bike, and suddenly took it, telling her he wanted to go to a cave where the lilium plants grew. She tried to stop him, but he'd add the flowers were white and bloomed only at this time of year. Continuing to pull her bike, he thought it was fine, since he loaned her his paint. The least she could do was lend him her bike. Turns out, he actually can't ride a bike, so Lily has to have him hold on to her. She began getting irritated, because he actually didn't know where the cave was. But that didn't matter to him. He just wanted to see the flowers. Lily couldn't believe she let herself get roped into this. She didn't have time to waste. But then, realizing this could be the chance to discover the secrets of Kit's painting, she decided she'd steal them for herself. He had her abruptly stop, and he got off to immediately start sketching at breakneck pace. Lily started to follow suit, but he finished much quicker. Checking her sketch, she turned with embarrassment. But alas, it was time to go. They'd spot some sheep, and Lily got so excited. She'd never seen any in real life before. She stared in awe as the sheepdog did his herding. She ended up dragging Kit into the farm so she could observe all the cute animals and sketch them. At one point, one of the farmers asked the two if they were on a date. Lily tried assuring them that wasn't the case. She went on and on about how they were searching for liliums and how they were students at the art academy, until her stomach embarrassingly started to growl. The farm couple chuckled and tossed the two some apples as well as a fresh bottle of milk. They lived in this area for a long time, but hadn't heard of a cave, and warned Lily to be careful, to head home before it gets too dark. After taking her drink of the milk, Lily had second thoughts about giving it to Kit, realizing it'd be an indirect kiss. She got excited seeing some wild rabbits, and observing the sundown glow of the grasslands. She admired all the sights she'd never find in Japan, with Kit sketching what he observed as quickly as he did. She thought he was such a show-off. She began to draw the bird as well. He couldn't believe she finished before him. He stared and said he'd never seen brush strokes like hers. She then showed him her yatate, a traditional Japanese writing utensil, handy for carrying brushes. She offered for him to try, and he wasn't adept. She explained the trick to holding it was with his thumb, index, and middle finger, then took his hand to make sure he held the brush to point vertically. His first drawing was definitely bad, and this made Lily feel glad in a way, seeing he couldn't master everything right away. He suddenly asked why she came here to England. She could obviously paint in Japan. Lily had always dreamt of this scenery. Many years ago, her father took her to an art exhibition where she saw Turner's paintings there. She was truly moved by the ambience, light, color, and distinctive brushwork. She wanted to paint just like that, so studying painting here was a dream come true. Kit wondered if this country was really all that great. Wherever he went, the scenery was always the same, so dull compared to that. He thought Lily's robin was far more interesting. It looked as if it might take off at any second. Lily took that compliment in modesty, then suddenly went flush with Kit drinking some of her milk. He apologized, offering her the rest, and with her declining, he didn't understand what was wrong and pointed out she's turned as red as a robin. She thought he really was a jerk. They continued their travels further at Kit's request. Lily asked what it was like to be number one, but honestly, he hadn't even thought about it until she mentioned it. He could tell she seemed to care a lot about rankings, and she told him it made sense, considering he didn't know what it was like to not be number one. No one even remembered number 2 or number 3. Again, he didn't get it. He never cared about what other people thought, because that had nothing to do with painting. Lily started to sulk about her woes over what would happen if she didn't become the best, but would be surprised when Kit told her she would. She thought men sure had it easy. They were free to choose their lives without any restrictions. But Kit actually didn't have that choice at all. Lily would suddenly skid and the bike would go rushing down the hill until they flew off. Unfortunately, the chain came off and it started raining. Lily blamed herself, but Kit put his jacket on her and told her not to. They take shelter in an abandoned barn. She apologized for what she said to him earlier and thanked him for letting her use his blue paint. However, he never planned on using blue in the first place. All he wanted to do was remember the beautiful things he saw every day, and if he painted them, he wouldn't forget. That was the only reason he painted. He suddenly smelled something. Lily thought it was her, even though she bathed properly every day. Kit would seek out what he was looking for, until they came across the view of the vast fields of Lilium, shining under the moonlight. The two would sketch the field, until the farmer from earlier found them. He asked who told him about the cave, and supposedly, Kit read it from a book he borrowed from Professor Brandt. Lily started scolding him, because if it was Shakespeare, it probably wasn't real. The farmer laughed again, thinking they were such a fun couple. Riding back together, Kit pointed out the flowers they picked had the same name as her. She thought he was such an odd guy. At the academy, the classmates were observing Kit and Lily's drawings. Dorothy teased their little expedition as romantic, but Lily wondered why she had to waste her time on Kit's selfish whims. However, seeing Lily's robin drawing, Dorothy teased harder, going, "Oh, so you even taught him new painting techniques. Sounds like you've gotten pretty close." Lily retorted that definitely wasn't the case, but glancing over at the lily by Kit's desk area, she went flush, then shook her head, refusing to lose to him. She boldly declared to take the number 1 spot. On another day, Lily would write to her parents. Her letter read, "Dear Father and Mother, I hope this letter finds you well. I know I promised to write as soon as I arrived, but I've been too busy to do so until now. Please forgive me. Time has passed quickly, and I've now spent a month in England. I'm doing fine. London is lovelier than I ever imagined. My daily life has been comfortable and pleasant so far. My bored Mother Diana's cooking is especially sublime, and every dish is fascinating. I am devoting myself daily to my studies at St. Thomas Art Academy. My professor always gives me encouraging words. I will continue doing my best to become number 1. Sincerely, Lily." Her father was glad to hear she was doing well, but the mother told him to stop being ridiculous. She knew her daughter all too well, believing Lily was clearly lying and putting up a front. She believed their daughter would come whimpering home to Japan soon enough. However, with the father seeing Lily's robin drawing in the corner, he only smiled, thinking of his beloved daughter. Lily sneezed with her parents just talking about her. You know, I think it's crazy how much these little superstitions play into Asian storytelling. Like, oh, you sneezed, so someone must be talking about you. Or, it came to me in a dream. That's why X and Y thing will happen that has implications for the plot. Do you guys think these kinds of things have inherent storytelling value? I personally would like to see less of them. Anyways, Lily and Dorothy were chatting about the upcoming art exhibition over lunch. The venue was the National Art Gallery. Nobles and art dealers from across England would be in attendance. Sometimes, works were purchased here, so students could even gain patrons. Geoffrey O'Brien would join in on their conversation as well. He already shipped his piece. Peter suddenly came rushing over, asking if they've seen Kit. He was passed out on the lunch table over. Peter began raging because Kit took apart Professor Brandt's gold watch again. This was not a laughing matter. The watch was worth 3 months of Brandt's salary, and somehow he held Peter responsible and chewed him out, insisting he fix it. Last time this happened wasn't so bad, because the headmaster's pocket watch only had 3 hands. However, the professor's chronograph was a minute repeater. Peter thought it was way too complicated. Geoffrey thought, for better or for worse, Kit was for sure eccentric. It was never boring with him around. He made remarks about Kit's filthy shoes, and they'd all be shocked, with Peter explaining they were made by John Lobb, and were the kind worn by the royal family. There was so much mystery that surrounded the #1 painter. Opening the window on another morning, Lily overheard a boy outside speaking Japanese. She greeted them, and the boy and his sister calmly confirmed they were indeed Japanese. Leaving for school, Shinosuke Kobayakawa would greet her and introduce his younger sister, Sakura. Lily fell over, hearing they were from Kamakura. The two would chat on their way to school. Lily coincidentally lived in Yokohama, the city just above his hometown. She asked what school Sakura would be attending, and Shinosuke plainly answered she wouldn't. Welcome to the 1900s. Lily and Dorothy would later come across him getting acquainted with the boys in the hall. Geoffrey complimented Shin's fluent English. His family was apparently acquainted with an English family that lived near his home. Lily was irritated because they didn't treat her this well, and Dorothy told her it was because Shin's English is better. That's just how it is. Apparently, Shin was a premier sculpture student. The Japanese government was paying his tuition and living expenses. Meanwhile, they were only covering Lily's tuition. Peter assumed Shin was an elite, having heard he came from a family of Buddhist sculptors. While the rest of the friends were heading to class, Lily took notice of the fact Kit continued drawing non-stop. By evening, Lily was still painting, even though it was nearing 7 p.m. Dorothy wanted to head home, but Lily wanted to keep going. The upcoming competition was her big chance. She didn't want regrets, definitely wanting to beat Kit this time. On the day of the National Gallery competition, Lily felt intimidated seeing the building's massive size. Inside, with all the observers and enthusiasts criticizing works, she was intimidated by them as well. With Dorothy leaving for a snack, Shin would come to see her, saying he also felt out of place here, and offered her a drink. He asked where her painting was, and with her gesturing towards the farm painting filled with sheep, he gleamed with excitement. Soon though, the men looking at her work would move to the painting of Big Ben. They were in awe, seeing the work of Kit Church for the very first time, and talked of how the Spencer family was buying up all his works, including this one. Geoffrey came by to ask if Lily had seen Shin's sculpture. It was a lovely rooster wood carving. Geoffrey had never seen such precise woodwork before. Peter came by to give his input as well, commenting on the use of the core and the outer edge of kuragaki from a persimmon tree. Dorothy came by stuffing her mouth full of food, and immediately told Shin if he wanted to marry her, he better speak up fast. And if he acted now, he could be third on the list. So delusional. But hey, I do think she is depicted pretty here at least. Everyone would turn to stare at the arrival of a high-ranking noble, the distinguished gentleman, His Grace Henry Church, Duke of Carlisle, an aristocrat of the highest rank. He's handled foreign diplomacy since the reign of the former queen. England's peace and prosperity owed much to him. They questioned why he'd be at a student competition. Richard Church told Christopher to stop dawdling since they were all here for his sake. Every student's jaw dropped, realizing the man was referring to Kit. And despite how formal he looked now, he pretty much ignored any formal greetings he was supposed to give to meet with his friends. He was getting irritated by all of this, and made it clear what he wore was not his idea. Henry came by, pleased to meet all of them, since they were his son's classmate. His older brother Richard couldn't believe Christopher was still going by that unrefined nickname Kit. He thought of Kit as nothing but an overgrown child. The three S's were gushing over Kit, saying they knew he was different from the rest of those commoners, calling him Lord Kit and Lord Christopher. Richard scolded Kit over the fact he had no plans on coming home for the holidays. They invited the royal family for dinner, and he asked Kit how they would explain his absence. To mediate this, Duke Henry invited the friends to Drunham Hall for the holiday 2 days from now. Dorothy dropped her plate over this. She, Joffrey, and Peter were gushing over the idea. And even though Kit tried to stop them, they gladly accepted the invite. Having heard it was the most picturesque country house in England, Dorothy would go even if fire or spears rained from the sky. Peter thought this was a once-in-a-lifetime chance to see Drunham Hall's art collection. Lily had no interest though. She's decided to draw 20 sketches per day over the break, and was fired up to close the gap between her and Kit. But Dorothy would convince her with the prospect of enjoying the Lake District's scenery, beautiful gardens, delicious meals, and most importantly, seeing Kit's talent up close. Lily then walked right up to Kit, accepting his father's gracious invitation. The gang got their tickets checked during the train ride. Lily experienced another new feeling, the fast speed of the English steam locomotive. That's because Japan didn't have the bullet trains yet. Dorothy teased her for being a bit reluctant to join them at first, so Lily flipped her attitude around, responding she was just excited about finding new motifs for her paintings. Sakura was just as happy to see sheep for the first time, but with her subtle gestures, Joffrey would comment on her quietness. Shin apologized on her behalf, saying she's been through a lot and can't speak. She did understand English though. The friends shifted the conversation to talk about Kit. It was hard to imagine such a carefree guy as an aristocrat. Peter explained the Church family was a famous dukedom that's produced many politicians and the Queen's close advisors. And Henry Church in particular was rumored to be steering the country's diplomatic efforts. They called him England's fire extinguisher. Lily was especially surprised about Kit's true identity. Dorothy suddenly brought up that Diana packed them lunch, triggering Lily's stargazy pie trauma. She tried to stop Dorothy from scaring everyone with it, but inside the basket was actually just some sandwiches, apples, and milk. Each sandwich had different fillings, mostly chicken and ham. And of course, Lily's was fish. They'd soon wander to the buffet cart, where Joffrey was enjoying some Bacchus red wine. The friends then made a toast to Kit for the invite to Drunham Hall. Lily had her first ride in an automobile, courtesy of the Church family's chauffeur. The friends asked how long it would take to get to the Church family home, unaware they entered the property several minutes ago. Everything here was considered the Church family's garden. The citizens of the village tipped their hats to the vehicles, and the chauffeur started to explain Duke Church's revered reputation here. Many years ago, they had a harsh summer. The entire harvest was lost, but the Duke used his own fortune to support the villagers in their time of need. That was one of his many stories. It would take until next morning to tell them all. Arriving at the mansion, the friends were blown away. The chauffeur laughed because compared to the main residence, this was actually on the smaller side. The Churches owned about 20 homes this size in other locations. Inside, they'd be welcomed by Duke Church and his son, Richard, the Marquis of Windermere. The two would leave them shortly for other matters, and they'd reconvene for dinner. Then, being left in the care of Stuart, the head butler, and Maria, the head maid. Lily would trip trying to catch up with the friends, and Kit approached, saying he's never seen anyone trip like that here. He picked her up, and everyone came over to him. Maria came scolding him for dressing so casual. She reminded Kit that a duke's household must always maintain appearances. Since he arrived, she hadn't seen him in proper attire even once. Then, she shoved him off to get dressed. The dining area was distinguished. Duke Church thanked the friends for taking care of Christopher. He was worried about his son's introverted nature, but now felt relieved to see him surrounded by so many friends. They were served their first fancy dish. I don't even know what this is. And Lily hesitated to reach for the proper silverware. Dorothy gave her a quick rundown earlier, which didn't stick, since Lily was already lost. Kit kicked her, and she called him out. Now everyone was staring. He told her to watch him, and with her drinking when he drank, and wiping when he wiped, he then told her she didn't have to copy everything. The Duke observed warmly as the two would chat. They'd have soup, salmon, and pheasant. Richard bagged the pheasant this morning at the nearby hunting grounds. He was quite the marksman. The Duke asked Kit if he'd like to go hunting as well. However, Kit really didn't like hunting. He thought it was a ridiculous display of the hunter playing with life for the sake of prestige. The girls stood up at the sight of desserts. Henry and Richard would call the night, and their friends could finally let their feelings of nervousness down. Kit thought it was the worst. He felt as stiff as a board. Maria would serve Lily and Dorothy cherry cask whiskey for bedtime. Since they had trouble sleeping, it brought back fond memories. Christopher also drank this, minus the whiskey, on nights he couldn't sleep. He was a lonely boy who didn't take well to people, so she thought it was nice to see him have so many friends. The two girls would chat while sitting by the windowsill. Lily explained the promise she made to her parents. If she didn't become number one within 6 months of studying, then she'd return to Japan and inherit the family business. Dorothy thought that'd never happen as long as Kit was alive, and suggested Lily use her fukiya. But of course, Lily wasn't a ninja. Jokes aside, Dorothy thought there was still a chance. Lily got second place on her very first assignment. If she worked hard, she could succeed in no time. Lily thought she'd be satisfied just being able to paint. But these days, she had a clearer idea of what she wanted to depict. To stay longer, she had to beat Kit. And thanks to Dorothy, she felt more encouraged. But Dorothy was already asleep and snoring. Lily woke up screaming, "Christopher Church!" and shoved Dorothy off of her. Unable to sleep, she decided to take a walk. Lily wandered the massive halls, every detail fine and exquisite. She came across a painting of a blonde-haired woman and wondered if she was the same one as the woman painted in the dining hall. She'd overhear Richard scolding Kit, asking how long he intended on continuing his rootless lifestyle. Kit saw no reason to act like an aristocrat, since Richard would be the one to inherit their father's rank. But Richard argued if something happened to him, Kit would be next to inherit it. Kit didn't enjoy his older brother being so eager to make decisions on his behalf. This wasn't who he wanted to be. Exiting the room, Kit stopped to observe Lily camouflaging with a blanket, but ignored it shortly. Wow, she's a real ninja now. We see a young Kit drawing an image of some lilies. He'd scurry from the family garden to come upstairs, where his mother and Maria were, sketchbook behind his back. His mother loved seeing his work, and he loved her encouraging words. Wiping the charcoal off his face, she chuckled, but it quickly turned to painful coughs. Blood on the lily drawing. Kit stared sadly. He walked into the hall to observe a beautiful portrait of his mother. He was still sad. That's what he felt in this home. At breakfast, everyone expressed having slept well, except for Lily. The Duke would invite them to the ball tonight, and despite Richard trying to object, Joffrey and Dorothy were certainly ready. Richard's concern stemmed from the fact a ball held by the Duke meant nobles of only the highest lineage would be in attendance. Without proper manners and etiquette, the friends would surely embarrass themselves. Duke Church thought there was no need to worry though. Most of the guests were elderly with aches and pains. He thought seeing young people dance would be more fun for everyone. Lily wandered outside, looking for inspiration to draw. She stumbled upon the family garden, taking in the botanical maze's beauty. Everything was so lovely. She didn't know what to draw. Then she came across Kit. Shin would jump scare her by commenting on this place being like a maze. He heard there were thoroughbreds nearby and thought she'd be interested. She was. So he called out to Kit to take them to see. The pasture for the horses was so huge, Kit didn't think of it as a pasture, more like a free-roam forest. Kit's father liked it that way, especially since it's how horses normally lived. They came across the beautiful steeds, running and grazing. Lily thought they were so fast and big. Japanese horses were nothing like them. My Umas begged to differ. She obviously hadn't seen my A-plus thoroughbred Mihono Bourbon, who dreamed of being a Gundam growing up. Sakura pointed out a beautiful golden horse. The heavenly horse, Akalteki breed. Being one of the oldest horse breeds, legend has it they were made for the gods to ride. This was Kit's beloved Aphrodite. Lily couldn't believe it. The horse's beauty was ethereal. Joffrey wanted to ride, claiming he was confident, but he quickly found himself tossed off. Lily would later sketch Aphrodite as she grazed, and seeing her head come up, she urged the horse not to move. She wished the horse would be more still, but Kit told her that was impossible, and soon, Aphrodite would run off. Akalteki were a cautious breed by nature, and Aphrodite in particular had never been tamed. She never listened to human commands, but was fond of Kit because they were friends. Lily had a question for Kit. Why did Aphrodite keep chewing on her hair? Kit assumed she must be curious, since Lily's hair looked like her tail. He thought she might like Lily. Seeing him break out into laughter, Lily could see he was teasing her again. We moved to the ballroom, filled with many guests and beautiful music. Joffrey stared nervously at the esteemed guests. Peter could tell with just one glance how grand this occasion was. A woman would come up to greet the boys, but with Joffrey being a little too ecstatic, she quickly left. Shin wondered where Lily was. she was back in her room because she didn't pack a formal dress. Dorothy thought it was obvious since they were visiting a noble's home, so she forgot to tell her. Lily was fine though. She could finish her sketch of Aphrodite. She told Dorothy to have fun for the two of them and bring her back some delicious food. Kit came up to the friends, shoulders stiff from greeting all the guests. He'd hear from Dorothy that Lily decided to stay in her room without a dress and decided to go take some action. Lily sighed lying on the bed. She's always put on a brave face and acted tough, but she was sad because she really wanted to go. Maria suddenly barged into the room, stating she was here on Lord Christopher's orders. She told Lily to remove her clothes this instant. They strapped her into a tight corset, telling her to bear just 3 more centimeters. Back where the friend group was, Richard would call out to Kit, telling him he needed to go greet another family. Everyone suddenly turned their attention and awed at Lily adorning a white dress, earrings, and lilies in her hair. She truly shined in a way that stood out from the rest. Maria told her to stand up straight and hold her head high, walk straight, and reach the white lily crest in the center, and Lord Christopher would come to her aid. Also, smile stronger than the most powerful gun. Everyone commented on her beauty. Some nobles were familiar with the dress. It was something they hadn't seen in a while. Kit began to approach, and her eyes widened, seeing his dashing looks. She asked if he arranged this dress for her. She wondered if she looked strange, if she was wearing it right. He simply extended his hand and told her the others were in the back. She took it, and they continued on their way. But hearing the musicians play a song for just the two of them, Kit reacted to it, letting Lily know it would be rude for them not to dance. She only knew the traditional Bon Odori, but he held her in, letting her know not to worry, to follow his lead. As the two waltzed, Lily felt as if it were just the two of them in a field of lilies, as if beautiful swans were flying above them. It was like a dream. The guests clapped over their graceful display. Continuing on their way, they'd be stopped by Richard, telling Kit his mischief had limits. He told his younger brother that dress was not something he could take out on a whim. Plus, there was someone else Kit was supposed to be escorting. Catherine Astor came by to compliment Christopher's wonderful dancing. He, however, gave a stern look at her. Richard introduced her as the eldest daughter of Lord Julius Astor, Earl of Rutland, and Christopher's fiancée. Lily and the friends couldn't believe it. Catherine gave a smug look, seeing Lily's dress, and told her the dress was worth enough to buy Eberston Hall. After all, Christopher's mother wore it on official appearances. He brought it out without permission. Richard had no idea what's gotten into him. Lily tried to apologize, but Kit told her not to let it bother her. But she told him it did. Now a scene was starting. She began to return it immediately, and Kit tried to go after, but she shouted, "Don't come near me!" Richard admonished Kit, putting her in an unfitting dress and indulging in a saintly sense of self-satisfaction seeing her smile. He told Kit elevating someone beyond their means would only end up humiliating them. To this, Kit undid his hair, then took off. Catherine gulped in grief. Back in Lily's room, clothes taken off, she wondered what she was thinking. She got carried away in that beautiful dress and ended up embarrassing herself. She wanted to draw, forget everything, and immerse herself in something pure and beautiful. She suddenly heard a horse squeal and thought of Aphrodite. Catherine wasn't the happiest, but seeing Lily wandering outside, she grew smug once more and decided to go after her. It was pitch black by the gardens. Lily collapsed hearing the squawk of a bird. She trembled, seeing that Catherine had found her. Dorothy came rushing back to the friends because she couldn't find Lily anywhere. The two would chat, Lily explaining she came out to finish her sketch of Aphrodite. Hearing she had come here earlier with Kit, Catherine thought the two seemed well acquainted. Lily told her that wasn't the case, and that she also had no idea that dress was his mother's heirloom, or that he had a lovely fiancée. She didn't know anything about him. She thought her own relationship with him wasn't as deep as Catherine's. And Catherine confirmed it. The two were engaged from the time they were born. She thought she knew everything about him. Until he left for London, they were always together. Catherine suddenly told Lily the dress was one of a pair. The gold rose sewn with gold thread, and the silver lily sewn with silver thread. The gold rose was inherited by Mrs. Amelia, Lord Richard's wife. But before Catherine could finish, who would inherit the silver lily? Lily wished her good night and began to leave. Catherine would stop her to say the best path to return was on the right. If she went straight, she'd risk encountering the peacock. And thus, Lily took a detour. The friends searched all over the mansion, finding no sign of Lily. They decided to tell Kit. Lily, meanwhile, was completely lost and tumbled over seeing the freaky eyeball-like plumage of a peacock, tripping over as it flew away. This unfortunately caused her ankle to sprain. She couldn't believe this was happening. She wished she had never come. Kit got the news from the friends, and learning the sketchbook was missing from Lily's room, he decided to rush to the pasture. Lily, meanwhile, decided to collapse over. On the train ride back, Lily seemed saddened, looking at her bandaged ankle. Shin was glad to hear she was fine, and warned her it was dangerous to walk in this country alone at night. This wasn't Japan. During his search, he heard the neigh of a horse, and eventually found Aphrodite waiting by Lily's side. Kit was surprised to see Shin walking back with Lily in his arms, and Aphrodite trailing behind. Lily fell asleep then, not having slept much the previous day. Shin decided to cheer her up by showing a wood carving. He carved it from the remnants of an oak tree that fell in the pasture. The round shape reminded Lily of a peony-shaped wagashi. It made her hungry for Japanese food. Dorothy rushed into her room, returning the day after to check on Lily, and brought tons of ricotta cheese and a new variety of bonbon. After hearing the details of what happened on the night Lily went out, Dorothy figured Catherine told her the wrong direction back to the mansion on purpose. She bet Catherine was jealous, seeing Lily dancing with Kit. But Lily thought Dorothy was being ridiculous. Dorothy countered with the fact that aristocratic marriages were messy, and reasoned with Kit avoiding his fiancée. Catherine probably felt humiliated, seeing how close the two of them were. They'd later go out, where Lily expressed her troubles. She spent too much, and was running out of money. Besides the trip to Drunham Hall, she went to the doctor too. At this rate, she couldn't even pay for room and board. Even if she were to write her parents asking for more, it'd take a month for their answer back, and they'd probably just tell her to come home. To make matters worse, Dorothy believed Diana would kick her out for sure. She's done it to unpaid guests before. There was definitely hope though. Dorothy told Lily to ask Professor Brant for work, as he had given a job to another student before. She brought up her economic troubles to Brant, and he answered, "Shakespeare once said, 'Fire that's closest kept burns most of all. The more your heart is burdened, the stronger its passion will burn.'" He had some options for her, but only on one condition. Working could not negatively impact her painting. Exiting his office, she excitedly showed Dorothy her new job translating a book on ukiyo-e. For those unfamiliar, the term translates to pictures of the floating world and refers to a genre of Japanese art that consists primarily of woodblock prints, often depicting the hedonistic, fashionable style of urban commoners, including kabuki actors, beautiful landscapes, and travel scenes. Meanwhile, as Kit continued his artistic work, his mind wandered to the moments Lily suffered because of him. He sighed with somber feelings. He'd later get an invite from Shin to join him at the British Museum. Shin wanted some guidance there, since it was so big, he could get lost. Shin marveled at the sight of all the historically significant works. Even though a lot of pieces were damaged, he thought the emotion they expressed were so powerful, you could hardly tell their age. It was as if they've attained eternal life. Shin told Kit he longed for this. His family had a long history. What they carved and how they did so was predetermined. Their reputation was based on how faithfully they recreated each motif. There was no room for freedom or originality. Sometimes, he forgot why he even wanted to be a sculptor. Perhaps he crossed the ocean to find that answer. Kit then took Shin to something he knew he'd like, the Pieta in St. Peter's Basilica. This sculpture was only a plaster replica, but it was one of Kit's favorite Michelangelo works. Even though Shin was at a loss for words, Kit thought this was nothing. He saw the real thing as a child. At that moment, he felt as if time had stopped, and even now, he's never felt anything more serene. All he could hear was his own heartbeat. For the first time, a cold marble structure taught him what it meant to be alive. And then it occurred to him. The contours of his memory blurred with time and became unrecognizable. But even so, if they could capture a moment in time and give it form, he thought maybe that memory would never fade. With Shin hearing he could see the real piece in Italy, his eyes widened. The two would meet up with Joffrey and Peter at the Old Duchess pub. Joffrey guzzled down half his glass and thought nothing beat the taste. He always came on his way home from the British Museum. Shin couldn't believe he always drank 12 pints. Apparently, in Ireland, where Joffrey was from, they had the 12-pint rule. Drinking 12 pints means you're a real man. Man, I like alcohol, but isn't that a little much? Peter could hardly keep up. He was getting tipsy already from just a few sips. All the while, Kit kept thinking about the night of the ball. The friends could tell he was down, despite him having a beautiful fiancée and a secure future. Kit didn't care, answering back that didn't mean anything. But Peter didn't take that well. He saw Kit as better off than any of them. He thought all his excess modesty was rubbing it in their faces. There was something else that bothered Peter. Why would Kit's father, the Duke of Carlisle, visit an exhibition at a relatively new school like St. Thomas? He heard their academy was built on a large endowment from a man of wealth. Henry Church's second name was Thomas, and not many people knew, but his nickname abroad was the Saint. St. Thomas Art Academy. He wondered if it was really all coincidence. Kit got irritated and decided to leave. He stood as the rain poured on him, just staring at the lilies of a flower shop. The days went by for Lily translating the ukiyo-e book, painting new works, getting up from sleep, rinse and repeat. She was more tired these days, falling asleep during places she normally wouldn't, and even falling out of her chair from exhaustion. Staring at paint supplies to buy, she was hesitant because of the price, but needed some because she was out of white. She accepted she needed to buy it to paint, even if it meant foregoing food. Catherine just happened to take a visit into the store and gave the two a greeting. She was here because an acquaintance of hers, who was a dress designer, was holding an exhibition at the Royal Academy of Arts. She was assisting with the design and modeling and would be in London for a while. Dorothy thought it was suspicious that Catherine happened to find them. It was as if she were searching for Lily, and Catherine didn't deny this at all. She had just debuted in high society this year, and to commemorate it, she wanted her portrait painted. She asked Lily to take on the job. She couldn't ask her fiancé because he didn't paint people. She quickly pulled out her checkbook, and Lily was shaking at the sight of a 200-pound check. I wasn't so impressed at first, but then I looked it up, and apparently 200 pounds in the 1900s is equivalent to about 32,000 pounds, or 42,000 USD. Holy God. Yeah, I'd definitely draw this annoying woman. Lily had pound signs in her eyes. Despite Dorothy's warning that this was suspicious, Catherine went further, saying if Lily needed supplies, she'd buy everything in the store for her. She wanted to get to know Lily better, saying she didn't have any friends in London. Catherine was so happy with Lily accepting. She ran and gave her a big hug, then soon left, with more matters to attend to. Oh man. Hey guys, you don't need me to tell you this, but trying to make a friendship this way is like a Faustian pact. Not a good idea. On another day, as Catherine was about to enjoy her tea, Lily arrived, expressing her gratitude for being given the opportunity to paint her. But Catherine would point out she was late, even though Lily came at the time she requested. Catherine then served Lily some tea, and Lily complimented the marvelous room. Catherine would observe outside the window, because across from them was where Kit lived. Catherine was surprised Lily had no idea. Since the two seemed close, she assumed Lily was aware. Before Lily could explain Catherine had the wrong idea, Catherine cut her off to say her father bought this whole apartment building for her. Since Kit was her fiancé, it was only natural she'd want to be nearby. Catherine would later come out in a special dress, and after Lily's first sketch of her in it, Catherine told her she wasn't fond of the way her face was oriented. She told Lily to start over, requesting Lily bring out her beauty and intelligence more. Lily had to redo the sketch over 3 times, each one not being to Catherine's taste. It was taking so long, Catherine was growing restless just sitting. Lily complimented the dress, and Catherine explained it was a haute couture piece, created for her debut. She wasn't satisfied with how it looked, having asked them to use the silver lily as a motif, but they couldn't replicate the beauty or elegance of the real thing. For generations, 2 flowers have been passed down in the Church family. The gold rose, which glowed like the sun and captivated all who saw it, and the silver lily, which rivaled the moon with its lucid, refined charm. The first time she encountered that dress, its beauty stole her heart. But with the image of Lily wearing that dress in her head, she felt frustration, not just at Lily, but Kit too. She was still upset at Lily, nevertheless. Catherine continued to complain about Kit always thinking of himself. She assumed she never entered his mind. I mean, to be fair, that's probably true. You were engaged before you were born, and it's pretty clear Kit is written in a way where he doesn't enjoy the expectations that have been placed on him. Because of Catherine's upbringing, she likely developed a sense of higher self-importance, and that is never going to appeal to someone like Kit. By evening, Lily presented her last sketch, but Catherine still wasn't satisfied. She told Lily to go back to the first one. Catherine's maid, Rebecca, would then enter, telling her it was time for her appointment, and so they'd have to continue work on this same time tomorrow. Lily sighed, because that didn't go well at all. She felt completely useless, not being able to meet her client's demands. Kit, who just happened to be coming home with groceries, asked what she was doing here. Lily put on bravado, telling him to be amazed, because she was currently painting Lady Catherine's portrait. He didn't really get it, but also didn't care. He asked if she was free tomorrow, because he heard there was an absurdly large bird with unusual feathers. This reminded Lily of that horrifying peacock, and she quickly refused. She asked, why her? Why not Catherine, since she was his fiancée? He stood unanswering until the bus came by. Lily would take it, saying unlike him, she was busy. Neither of them knew Catherine and her maid were watching from above. Lily would get up, study hard in class, continue her portrait work, continue her translating work. The continued next thing after next thing left her exhausted, and Kit noticed it. Leaving school for the day, Lily told Dorothy she wouldn't be needing dinner tonight for the second time in a row. Despite Dorothy's worry, Lily assured her she was fine, and her stamina was the one thing she was confident of. Continuing the portrait, Catherine would comment on Lily's age of 20, saying, with her being so leisurely with her time, it'd be hard for her to get a husband. Catherine brought up that Kit used to paint and draw all day as well. She never understood what was so fun about that. All the sitting and staring at the same object for hours. Lily thought Catherine had a point, because she found herself drawing before she even realized it. She figured it was just what she loved to do. Lily was sure Catherine lost track of time when she engaged in hobbies too. However, Catherine didn't get that. She had no hobbies. She didn't even know what things she loved or enjoyed. Rebecca would scold Lily for being rude and explain that unlike her, Catherine had other important things to do with her time. Despite this, Catherine would fixate on the idea of things she loved. Heading out from school on another day, Shin greeted Lily. The two hadn't talked in a while since she'd been so busy. He told her Dorothy was worried Catherine was bullying her, but Lily didn't think Catherine was a bad person. She just had strong opinions. It made her happy, because no one's ever asked her to paint their portrait before. He invited her over for dinner, and while explaining tonight, they were having grilled salmon and potato namasu with watercress. Lily's stomach let out an embarrassing growl. At Shin's place, her mouth watered all over the wonderful food Sakura prepared. One taste of miso soup made Lily break out sobbing. She hadn't had a meal this good in so long. Catherine had Rebecca examine her portrait. She was surprised to see she was drawn with a smile, because Catherine never smiled. This was normal for a dignified lady. She challenged the idea of herself finding things she loved. She was going to become a member of the church family. It was her duty to become a woman worthy of the silver lily. But then, she remembered Kit and Lily dancing together. It made her bitter. She thought she had no need for a smile. Rebecca quickly grabbed the portrait. She was going to throw it into the Thames. In a moment of self-reflection, Catherine remembered all the kindness Lily had shown her, the care she took in getting to know her. She hurried off to stop Rebecca, where Kit was drawing like usual. He'd noticed Rebecca before she could throw it, and she stopped, shrieking in his presence. Catherine soon joined them, and her demeanor changed from desperate to dignified. Asking what brought him here, he asked Catherine straight if she was meaning to throw away the portrait Lily had been working on. Catherine hesitated to answer, until she let out, "It's a painting I commissioned. I can do with it whatever I please." He glared and told her an artist's paintings are the record of the time they lived. They're the artist's life itself. Throwing one away is like killing the person who made it. Lily just happened to walk in on their squabble, as Catherine was challenging Kit for taking her side. Catherine's never seen him this angry before. She wondered if this was how wives felt when their husbands ran wild. She asked if he was in love with Lily. He sighed, uttering, "I see, so that's it." Looking back at Catherine, he told her she might be right. He was probably in love with Lily. Hearing this unfortunately caused Lily to stumble over. As she tried running away, she continued bolting off, and Kit rushed after her. Catherine only grew sadder, filled with inadequacy, continuing her way home with Rebecca following behind. 12 years ago, at the church family's main residence, her mother introduced her to her fiancé, Christopher Church, bestowing upon her the ideal to become worthy of the church name. Catherine tried greeting him, but he just turned away. This made her pout. Kit's mother, however, Charlotte Church, told Catherine they were pleased to meet her, and Catherine's eyes widened, seeing the beautiful woman. While Kit was drawing in the garden, Catherine would sit by his side with her doll, getting awfully bored. Kit then asked if she made her doll's dress, and she was eager to tell him she made it as sewing practice. Her mother said it was the maid's job and told her not to, but she wanted to try it once. Kit told her it looked pretty, but she was right. It was definitely sloppy. She thought he was such a meanie. Their days would continue on together, and Catherine would question what Kit was to her. Her fiancé? The husband she should devote herself to? Even though her mother told her to be a proper lady worthy of the church name? What she really dreamed about was the silver dress passed down in the church family, the silver lily. All this time, Lily had been running, and she finally stopped to catch her breath. She couldn't believe Kit was in love with her. She shook her head no over and over while blushing, telling herself there was no way, and he didn't care about her at all, and she must have misheard. She would spot Peter nearby. He seemed pretty down. He questioned what he was even doing. He came to St. Thomas to study what he loved, freely and fully. He always loved to paint, but now he lost faith in himself every time he picked up a brush. He thought he had no talent. She tried to tell him that wasn't true, that everyone respected him, and his art was excellent. He told her it was okay, and thanked her for her concern. He was just a little down on himself, and would be fine tomorrow. Returning home, Lily would be surprised to find Rebecca at her door. Catherine was waiting for her inside her room, annoyed that Lily returned home so late. She couldn't believe the audacity Lily had making her wait in this tiny, stench-filled room. Lily thought she was being so rude. It was turpentine she smelt. Also, she didn't recall making an appointment with her. Catherine silenced Lily, then added that she absolutely despised her. After all, Lily danced with her fiancé right in front of her. It was so humiliating. Lily didn't even know Catherine was bullying her this entire time. She told Lily that aristocracy wasn't a fairy tale. For so long, she's done everything to try to be a proper lady, worthy of wearing the silver lily. She began to weep, as she said she sacrificed everything else in the process. She gave up sewing and put up with teachers she hated. That dress was all she lived for. And yet, she couldn't understand why the dress chose Lily. Lily apologized. She thought Catherine had every right to be angry, and was sure Kit merely felt sorry for her that day. She thought the dress was meant for Catherine. Only someone as elegant and glamorous as her deserved to wear a dress that beautiful. Catherine didn't come here for Lily to throw her own pity party. She asked Lily straight, how did she feel about Kit? Catherine's seen countless women chase after him for his money, but if Lily was one of them, she'd never allow it. Lily's eyes widened. She thought back to the time she first saw Kit's painting at the gallery, and in that moment, it was like something mysterious came over her. It was hard for her to explain, but his art had everything she lacked. There was no hesitation in it. His paintings were pure and elegant, but eye-catching too. Maybe she felt a yearning for them. She wanted to see what he'd paint next. What colors would he use? Before she knew it, his artwork was always on her mind. But everything else about him was a mess. He always made a nuisance of himself and got others involved. And yet, she couldn't take her eyes off of him. But not in a weird way. She was just sure if she lost sight of Kit, he definitely caused trouble. He always spoke rudely, and the fact he had no ill will made it only worse. Catherine told her that was enough. She understood, and then said, "You're in love with Kit, aren't you?" Lily shrieked, but Catherine was done for the day. Despite all that transpired, she told Lily to continue her portrait. She thought it was a crude little painting, but she's grown the tiniest bit fond of it. It wouldn't be tomorrow though, because Catherine had to return to Enfield. She demanded Lily come to Astoria House, her main residence, for the finishing touches. She then had Rebecca step on the gas and left them behind. That night, Catherine's words asking if Lily was in love with Kit rang in her mind. She couldn't sleep a wink because of it. At the start of class the next day, when Kit came in, Lily backed against the wall. She thought it was strange he was acting perfectly normal, as if nothing had happened. She imagined a little chibi of him saying, "You heard me when I said I'm in love with you? Well, now you know." She was losing her mind. Dorothy would then tell her Joffrey invited them to the pub tonight to celebrate Shin getting first place at the latest critique session. At the Old Duchess, Joffrey complimented Shin's novel approach to his winning sculpture. It had quite a mysterious air. Dorothy could tell Joffrey was basically saying it looked like a beautiful woman. Peter began to ruin the mood with his inadequate talk again, mentioning Shin was amazing for just arriving and already earning a spot in the gallery. Joffrey tried to cheer him up, but Peter would take it out on him next. He asked Joffrey if it didn't frustrate him to fall behind a newcomer as well. Dorothy told him to chill out, but for Peter, the more he painted, the more he realized he was a man of ordinary talent. Under his breath, he uttered, "I'm not like Kit." Kit called him pathetic. Rather than complain and worry about other people's work, he thought Peter should ask himself whether he was painting what he wanted to paint. Tensions were heightening. Peter responded, "Easy for you to say. Do you know how hard it is to put my visions to canvas? You were born into a privileged family and blessed with a natural talent. Dealers constantly shower your work with praise. Lord Christopher Church will never have to worry about such things." Kit was unmoved, replying, "If this is about not being able to bring your visions to life, it sounds like you're making excuses for your lack of technique. You're sloppy." Peter suddenly lifted Kit by the collar. The friends tried to stop him, but Kit went further, adding, "Aren't we studying to get better because we're sloppy? All of us." Peter refused to accept Kit was like them. He thought Kit could never understand how they felt, but Kit challenged this, asking why Peter cared about what people thought. Praise from others was meaningless, and if Peter was only painting to be number one, he might as well quit. Everyone was caught off guard by the loud slap. Lily slapped Kit straight in the face. She told him he had no heart, that he always did as he pleased and hurt others along the way. They were all giving it everything they had, but even then, it wasn't good enough. They struggled and suffered again and again. Not everyone could do what Kit could. She told him a fool who didn't understand how people felt had no right to be around others. With silence, Kit simply turned and walked towards the doorway. He told them that actually, he never once thought his paintings were any good. That's why he was so desperate to paint all the time. Lily's heart ached, hearing the true nature of his paintings, while he slowly left them. After that night, Kit stopped coming to the academy. Things were a little sadder at the academy as of recent. The three S's pondered about Lord Christopher's disappearance for a week now, Sarah wishing to be the one to give him moral support. Peter was gone as well. Dorothy told Lily not to be so hard on herself, and that it wasn't her fault. But remembering how she slapped him, she wondered how she could say something so harsh. Shin would make a surprise visit to their classroom, learning Lily's been like this ever since that night. Dorothy told him to try cheering her up, since they were both samurai, but he reminded her that wasn't the case. Walking through the halls, Lily sighed. She knew all along that night she wasn't sympathizing with Peter. She felt like Kit was talking about her. She had no right to strike him though. She felt awful. Shin would call out to her, saying he wanted to take a detour on the way home and asked her to join him. It was her first time at the zoo. Shin sometimes came here to visit for sculpture references because there were a lot of animals here he couldn't find back at home. Lily gushed, seeing the little tuxedo birds waddling past them. Shin explained penguins couldn't fly, but swam very fast. She thought they were so adorable and well behaved. They viewed tons of animals, Lily making sketches of everything she saw. She let out a huge gasp, concentrating so hard she forgot to breathe. Shin couldn't help but laugh over her ridiculousness. Heading out, she thanked him for inviting her. He would suddenly look at her face and tell her he could see the spark in her eyes was back. He was glad. She then thanked him for cheering her up and admitted Peter wasn't the only one worried about being number one. She was too. She knew she was lashing out, but couldn't stop herself. Shin remarked that it did seem like Kit had everything: a privileged family, natural talent, and a free spirit unburdened by others. It's what they all dreamed of. He understood how Peter felt, because even he felt jealous of Kit, but he didn't believe Kit said those things to Peter to hurt him. Kit was likely trying to tell Peter, don't sacrifice the things you love for the sake of others' praise. Without even realizing it, they got caught up in the race for approval and fame. Before they knew it, they lost sight of their purpose and ended up wandering in the dark. He was sure Kit saw them falling into that trap and felt he had to say something, to be themselves. Shin also thought Kit was so tactless in his expression, and Lily agreed. Going on, Shin told Lily after he graduated, he was thinking of going to Italy. He wanted to see Michelangelo's real work up close, study in his homeland while breathing the same air as him. He knew his family's business was important, but his curiosity had grown beyond his control. Lily told him curiosity killed the cat. He knew that, but also that you only lived once. There was no room for regrets. It might have been Kit who taught him that. Arriving back home, Rebecca was waiting to escort Lily, completely unplanned and with total disregard for anything Lily might have had going on. Catherine was waiting at the mansion for Lily to finish her portrait. It took 3 hours by automobile. They had to go this instant. Lily was amazed seeing the large Astoria house estate. Its foundation rested on water. Catherine was mad at Lily for being late. Lily couldn't believe her. Catherine was the one who called her here suddenly. To this, Catherine responded, "And what about it?" Lily had no words. Lily dawdled as they continued towards their painting location. The Astor house was so beautiful. Lily went straight to work, but felt so nervous surrounded by all these valuable items. If she spilled or splattered paint, Rebecca let her know she'd pay for any damage. Catherine told Lily to drop the formalities and just refer to her by Catherine without lady in front of it. Lily had no choice in the matter. The place was extremely quiet, with Catherine's parents in Switzerland on official business. They were staying at their Basel home, so Catherine was here only with her maids. She was getting bored like usual and pointed out Lily always wore the same clothes. And Lily told her she didn't have much Western clothing, or spending money for that matter. Even buying new outfits, they always ended up looking similar. Catherine slowly got up and exited the room, telling Lily to come to her. Lily would find several dresses laid out on the bed. Catherine was giving them all to her. Since they were out of style, she thought they were perfect for someone unfashionable like Lily. The two were about the same size. However, Catherine had to comment that Lily had no curves. Lily didn't know how to react to Catherine's kindness mixed with insults. She was in awe seeing herself in a green dress. Catherine loved the lace design of the collar. It was called Honiton lace, a famous material used for the queen's wedding dress and veil. Lily felt overwhelmed with joy. Catherine had Lily try dress after dress, describing the fine intricacies of each design. Lily could see Catherine really loved fashion. Catherine went flush with the compliment and admitted she wanted to apologize to Lily. She was sorry for barging into her room the other day. She was in turmoil. Until now, she never thought about anything other than marriage. So when Lily asked her what she loved, she didn't even know what Lily was saying at first. After that, she felt so lost about so many things. Like, should she follow tradition and get married? Is joining the church family really the right path for her? Then she realized, heck no, I won't marry him. Why couldn't she make decisions about her own life? Also, Kit was practically a hermit and had no interest in her at all. When she saw Lily so focused, she realized Lily was just like Kit. It made Catherine jealous, but she also envied her at the same time, because Lily had something she lacked. But now she could see she had one thing. Whenever she felt sad or lost, these beautiful dresses have always been there for her. Just wearing them gave her the courage to live. It was Lily who helped her realize that. She liked Lily's portrait of her a lot. She absolutely loved it. These dresses were her way of thanking Lily for helping her understand how she felt. Catherine wasn't the only one who had gifts to give. Lily brought a Yuuzhan kimono for her. Catherine loved this as well. Lily knew she was going to sound brazen, but she really wanted to paint Catherine's inner self. No matter how much she tried, she felt she just couldn't capture Catherine's inner beauty. That's why it took her so long. But now, she thought she could do it. Catherine felt bad again. She requested Lily start over as an official commission. She wanted Lily to paint her in this kimono, and she could take as long as she liked, because Lily was her first true friend. Lily squeaked with tears in her eyes, happily accepting. The two embraced in the hug of a beautiful friendship. Heading back together, they'd be stopped by Rebecca, who told Catherine that Lord Richard was here to see her. Catherine would ignore any pleasantries he wanted to make and cut to the chase. He requested, since Kit has returned to Drunham Hall, to wed him this weekend. Catherine told Richard to wait. This was too sudden. However, he'd tell her that Kit quit school, perhaps finally being ready to grow up now. Lily tried objecting to this, but Richard cut her off to say she lacked basic manners. He told Catherine to be selective with who she was close to. Otherwise, it could hurt their family reputation. Catherine wasn't going to take that. She asked him what was wrong with being friends with Lily. Also, she found it hard to believe Kit wished to marry. Richard didn't understand. Marriage was Kit's duty. They were English aristocrats. That didn't matter to Catherine anymore, though. She told him she had no intention of marrying for the sake of country or family. Furthermore, she couldn't marry someone she didn't love. She bid him farewell, and he took his leave, asking if she was sure. She only responded, "Good night," after he was gone. She was so overwhelmed, she fell over. Soon after, it hit her. Saying those things to Richard, the Astor family was done for. She'd find a way to deal with it, though. More importantly, she found it hard to believe Kit would give up so easily. Richard might have imprisoned Kit, because back in the day, whenever Kit was truant, they'd punish him by locking him in an old tower. Lily told her they should go save him. They couldn't just sit here and do nothing. Catherine then called for Rebecca, who definitely heard everything, and she was already suited up for the mission. She floored it in the automobile and tossed Lily around intensely. But this was a necessity. They needed to save Kit before Richard made it back. Rebecca busted through a small wooden fence and continued on a faster road while Lily screamed. Nearing Drunham Hall, the automobile broke down. they'd have to walk from here. Probably a good idea since Lily was carsick now. They arrived at the old tower. Kit was likely on the top floor. They tried checking various doors all around, but couldn't seem to find a way in. Until eventually, Lily started tying her dress up. Catherine thought she was being downright indecent, but Lily needed to do this to climb up. There was only one opening they could see. She made no progress whatsoever though. They heard the neigh of a horse, and Aphrodite came galloping their way, immediately starting to chew on Lily's hair. Catherine had never seen anyone but Kit interacting with the horse. Lily tried standing atop Aphrodite to get better climbing leverage, but the horse would get angry with Catherine's touch and send Lily flying, coincidentally at the spot she needed to climb into for plot convenience. Catherine would fall back, seeing Lily nearly fall, and Kit would come by, asking what she was doing here. He then saw Lily shrieking about how she was going to fall and die, and so he rescued her. By morning, he called them stupid for thinking he was in prison. Also, extra stupid because Catherine forgot she and Kit had hidden the keys to this place under a stone block in the front. Kit chuckled. Who would actually try to climb a wall? He thought Lily was one of a kind. She turned away, feeling a little embarrassed. They'd learned he was here because his father collapsed, but he'd stabilize soon. Kit's brother was working at Downing Street in his place, so Kit had to stay by his side. Maria would all of a sudden creepily appear from the forest and tell them Duke Church was calling for them. Entering, Lily and Catherine were surprised to see Kit's father looking completely worn down. Despite this, he felt at ease with the air being good and everything quiet. Speaking with the three, he told Lily he saw her paintings at the critique session. He thought they were gentle and tender, likely reflecting her heart. He was sure she'd be a good artist and looked forward to seeing her grow. She then stood up, knowing it wasn't her place to say, but begged Henry to let Kit keep painting. She believed his talent was great enough to change the world. He'd captivate the hearts of many people, and most of all, as a friend and rival, she wanted to paint alongside him again. The Duke thought Richard had given them all the wrong impression. Both of his sons took after him when he was younger. They weren't good with words. He could see, though, that Richard was trying to look after his only brother in his own way. Henry was a painter as well once. He traveled the world, followed his heart, and painted nature's grandeur, only returning to the church household when his older brother died in an accident. However, he couldn't settle into the aristocratic life and spent his days in a drunken fog. The one who gave him purpose, taught him duty, and brought love into his life was his wife, Charlotte. He thought for better or for worse, the people we meet can change our lives, and told Kit he's crossed paths with the right people. Whether he made the most of that was up to him. Kit asked for more time. There were still things he wanted to do, and so his father told him to go back and do them. The girls were happy. Kit was surprised. Taking their leave, Henry told Catherine the Astor family has been and always will be their sworn friends. She had nothing to worry about. Then called for Lily and whispered, "Please take care of Kit." Richard entered right after they left, remarking his father was too soft on them. At the car, Catherine would scurry to Kit's side to tell them their engagement ended as of today. A man who cared only for painting and ignored his noble duties was not the right man for her. She wished him luck though, and they shook to their friendship. On the ride back, Kit thanked Lily, and she in turn apologized for hitting him that night. She touched his cheek, asking if it hurt. Instead of answering, just like usual, he only told her he wanted to draw. The two would fall asleep, and he woke up to her knocked out on his shoulder. She uttered, "I missed you," in her sleep, but he couldn't understand it since she said it in Japanese. Dorothy found Lily up and early for breakfast the next morning. Today was a special critique session. Since it had been 6 months, it was also Lily's last chance. However, Lily's decided to stop worrying about rankings. It wasn't that she didn't care, but being number one wasn't the reason she painted. She had to be herself. That's what was most important. In class, everyone was buzzing. Graduation was in 6 months. They all wanted to leave their mark. Peter was absent again, and Kit hadn't come in either. Professor Brandt clapped to quiet them down. He knew they all seemed a bit restless with the second half of the term approaching. He wrote the word free on the chalkboard. This time, the theme was freedom. Life was short and incredibly fleeting. With the limited time they had, he posed a question, asking where they'd find freedom. They had until today's dismissal. Lily ran sprinting off. Earlier, she was wondering where Kit was. She had a bad feeling. She experienced a cold area where he started sneezing on the way back to London. She'd accidentally bumped in his shin, and when she explained her worry for Kit, He could only watch as she left him behind. She made it to his residence, politely asked if anyone was home, and entered. She treaded lightly up the stairs and stared, finding the sketch of the robin they saw while searching for lilies together. Turning around, she shrieked in horror, finding Kit bloodied on the floor. He woke up in his bed to the smell of hot food and found Lily drawing while cooking at the fireplace. He asked why she was here, and she scolded him, worried because he didn't come to school. She thought he might be sick in bed with a cold, and then found him in a pool of blood. He explained he was feeling dizzy and thought he should eat something, and remembered biting a tomato before he passed out. She harped on him for not remembering the exhausting work he put her through. She changed his stained clothes and carried him to bed, and now couldn't believe his only response was, "Wow." More importantly, though, he wanted to know what she was cooking. The two enjoyed scones and tea together. Lily told him she was sorry, but he felt like he was the one who needed to apologize. For the ball, the dress, and even Catherine's portrait. She told him he was wrong. She was happy that night. Wearing that beautiful dress and dancing in a castle felt like a dream come true. She thought it was her own fault for getting carried away, and then she took it out on him. That was wrong of her. Catherine frightened her at first, but spending more time with her, her impression changed. She thought Catherine was a hard worker and had a lot of lovable qualities. Kit thought Lily was amazing because no matter what happened, she always put her best foot forward. Kit felt he wasn't like that. Brant told him something once during the first time his painting was displayed in the gallery. Like father, like son, his brushwork greatly resembled his father's. However, Henry's paintings sprang from the eyes of an adventurer who traveled the path of hope and bathed in the light of dawn. That's how Brant remembered them. He thought Kit's, on the other hand, were momentary scenes glimpsed by a young man who happened to look back as he ran from something in the dark. It was the same thing Kit's father said to Brant back when they were students. They were tough words, but Brant was grateful for them. He believed in the power of words more than anyone. If he said something scathing, it was because he believed in you. Lily remembered when Brant told her she painted like a teacher. To this, Kit said her art sprung from the eyes of an adventurer, setting off on a journey under the light of dawn. Her works might not be popular now, but he liked them. Lily went flush from his words, and told him the first time she saw him sketching on the banks of the Thames, she wanted her art to be like his. She wondered how he could draw so freely, and imagined how fun it would be if she had the same command of her brush. She wanted to capture her visions freely like him, but hated herself when things didn't go right, and took it out on him. But now, the person she looked up to told her they liked her work. Nothing made her happier. He gave her meaning to her time in England. She told him she was truly grateful for him, and that she was ready to go back home to Japan. Heading out, she thought about how she told him if she didn't earn first place at this critique session, she'd be sent home. That was her condition for coming to England. But the deadline was over, and so was her time at St. Thomas. She'd definitely miss it, but in the end, she was happy to receive his wonderful words, and also learned that being herself was what mattered most. He taught her that, too. Sitting in bed with Dorothy that evening, she recounted everything that happened. The two were definitely going to miss each other. While at the same time, Kit was going through the sketchbook Lily left behind, each sketch more and more compelling as he flipped the pages. Joffrey would invite the girls out to the pub after school. Lily adamantly declared she'd go. There was no use moping around. 12 pints for her. Kit passed by, telling them to count him in. The friends were joyous to finally see Peter again. He was sorry for worrying them. He went to Liverpool to help his father, who worked as an art dealer, and needed time away from London to clear his head. He apologized to everyone for what he said that night. It was out of line, and he was ashamed of his foolishness. He admitted to being jealous of Kit, but to their surprise, Kit took blame as well. He was always alone, and the first person who reached out to him was Peter. Kit only stuck around school this long because of Peter. He was grateful. To celebrate their reconciliation, Joffrey decided to play the piano for them, and he was quite good. He dedicated the song to the pure love that was friendship. Peter thanked Kit for being honest with him that night. He was sure those words were hard to say, but they opened his eyes. Kit told him he was his own man, and he didn't have to compare himself to anyone, to value himself, no matter what the world says. That's what Kit was thinking then. He was thinking of his precious friend. The friends enjoyed their merry time laughing, dancing, and playing that night. Heading out, the friends would chat, while Lily would fixate on Big Ben. Her time here was coming to an end. Dorothy would invite her out to visit her family for the weekend. Lily enjoyed the family dinner there greatly. She thought all she'd ever eat in Britain was smelly fish and boiled potatoes. Dorothy's youngest sister, Susan, asked if Lily was a samurai or a geisha. Another sibling thought she could walk on water. Another asked if she brought her shuriken. Dorothy had to quiet them down. No more of this until after dinner. They awed at the strokes of Lily's brushwork. Susan smiled, overjoyed that Lily drew her. By the time the kids were put to bed, Lily expressed her envy for Dorothy. She wished she had siblings too. Taking a walk outside, Dorothy showed her River Cone. It ran through the Cotswolds, all the way to London, and eventually to the ocean. It's like everything was connected. Lily's felt like she's grown here from the timid person she was before. She asked what Dorothy was going to do after graduation, and was surprised to hear she'd be getting married. Dorothy was betrothed to a man who proposed through her parents before she left for school. Spending her time at St. Thomas, she really started to enjoy painting, and even started thinking she could accomplish something too. But after seeing Lily and Kit, she knew for sure she didn't have any special talents. She enjoyed art, but that was it. Now she realized how beautiful her home village was, something she had never noticed growing up. Even if she didn't become a painter, she didn't mind the idea of living here with her mother, surrounded by a lot of children, and painting from time to time, because the things she wanted to paint were all right here. She showed a picture of her fiancé, Mike. Lily thought he looked handsome, but Dorothy didn't think he was her type at all. She imagined he'd make a good husband though. Lily was surprised. She thought Dorothy was in love with Joffrey. She responded she was, and she thought Joffrey felt the same. Lily asked why not be with him then, but Dorothy thought a fun-loving drunk like him could never live in a village like this. Dorothy loved Joffrey's face, his voice, and even his bearing. She was sure he'd make a great lover, but never an ideal husband. The same went for her. No matter how she felt about him, the life of an Irish noble wasn't for her. Living here was what was most important. Lily thought the same way about Kit. She hadn't told him that she loved him yet, but knew their stations in life were completely different. She realized she liked him far too late. Returning to school, the girls would head up to check the critique pieces. Dorothy in particular was curious who would win, without Lily and Kit competing. Lily was thrown off, with everyone staring at her with shocked faces, and in front of Peter sat Lily's sketchbook with the label of first place. Peter told Dorothy to flip the pages. The sketchbook itself was the artwork. And wow, the flipping of the book pages was like animation. They compared it to a mutoscope, which is an early coin-operated motion picture device from the 1890s. Peter asked Lily if she knew about John Barnes' Linnet. She had no clue. Linnet was the inventor of the flip book called the kineograph. The mutoscope, meanwhile, flipped photographs to create the illusion of motion. Her sketchbook bridged the two concepts together. The idea had existed for a while now, but no one actually tried it. It was too time-consuming, but now that Peter had seen it for himself, it made perfect sense to call Lily's piece the very embodiment of artistic freedom. The rest of the students applauded her. She won fair and square and wouldn't have to go back. Professor Brandt then called her by full name, summoning her to his office. It was there he explained that Kit brought him the sketchbook. Kit, on that morning after the assignment, brought it, saying nothing at first, except that he'd understand just by flipping the pages. Brandt was blown away. He couldn't imagine how long it would take to draw all of these. That's when Kit answered. It took half a day. She drew them on the day the assignment was announced, so it fit the submission deadline. He submitted it on her behalf. Lily had no idea. Brandt figured that'd be the case. This was the first time he'd seen Kit act for someone else. It spoke to how much her work must have moved him. Brandt at first tried to decline the book since it hadn't been submitted that day. The rules were clearly defined. To this, Kit responded, "If the rules are facts, then what do you call that sketchbook? There's nothing fraudulent about the 100 drawings inside. Anyone who sees them will be so moved, they can't help but gasp in awe. This piece can't be constrained by mere rules. Professor Brandt, the things you've taught me have always been correct, but not this time. Lily's drawings are the only facts that matter." She couldn't believe Kit said that about her, and Brandt agreed with him. The theme of the assignment was freedom. In other words, he wanted them all to break free of preconceptions. Lily fulfilled the objective impressively. He extended his hand, telling her that every year, it's customary for the oil painting department to donate its graduation pieces to the royal collection. This year, he selected Kit Church, and now Lily. At the same time, she's earned a referral to the prestigious Royal Academy of Arts. Her paintings would represent their academy. Preparations would likely coincide with the competition exhibition. She had no time to return home now, and Lily swore to paint with her life. She'd then run off, looking for Kit. She couldn't wait to see him, having no idea he was riding the train off to somewhere else. Lily would write another letter, telling her parents she earned the #1 spot at the academy, along with a referral to the prestigious Royal Academy of Arts. She wouldn't grow complacent though. She planned to devote herself even more to her artwork here in London. Dorothy would check in, and Lily was a little sad Kit went missing again. He sat in a black suit with a lily in his hand by his father's bedside, where he lay surrounded by lilies. They buried him. Brant was there as well. Many were hoping for Henry's recovery, but his illness took a turn for the worse. By sunset, Evans, their former gardener, visited with his daughter, Amy. He served their family nearly 10 years ago, and Henry was the one who named his daughter. Evans truly admired the Duke. He treated the common folk so well. Amy then presented Kit with a white flower. It was an autumn rose. They hoped Kit would visit sometime. Back at the house, Richard was busy with work. Maria and Kit tried telling him to rest, but he couldn't. Any disrespect to the mourners would hurt the church family for generations. They'd have plenty of time to mourn later. He thought now was not the time though, and asked Maria to bear it a little longer. He worked diligently, but she wished he would rest. On top of the funeral arrangements, he also took over all of his father's duties, working endlessly without much food or sleep. Kit would meet him working in the dining room, trying to convince his brother to rest. If he collapsed, the lives of everyone in Carlisle would be affected. Richard sighed. He never thought he'd hear those words from him. Kit was surprised to hear his older brother refer to him as Kit, as he invited him on a moonlight walk. Richard was more relaxed on this walk than he'd been in a while. He reminisced on the time their mother planted the blue poppy flowers. Kit helped, while Richard got bored halfway and climbed up the oak tree. They remember the spot their father painted at often. Richie got bored from being so still, and his mother would scold him. He ran off to go hunting with Stu, and Henry laughed, thinking Richard took after her. At least he wasn't barefoot. He thought the first time they met, she'd been raised in the Highlands by gray wolves. Charlotte called him rude, and said the first time they met, she'd never met a man so uncivilized. He even offered her a piece of bread covered in charcoal. He told her the girl raised by Highland wolves had grown into the world's most beautiful lady and become his wife. She told him the wild, ill-mannered bohemian painter had transformed into a clear-headed gentleman and become her precious husband. They both changed because of each other. When Kit asked, his mother told him she loved his father's paintings more than anyone else's in the world. Kit lit up with a smile, telling his father he wanted to try painting too. However, his mother would tell him that wasn't actually what he did for work. His real job was to ensure the people's happiness. They were given life by the nation and the people who engaged with it. In return, they had to defend the people's way of life. That was their duty as aristocrats. Kit was finally beginning to understand what his mother meant by that. Richard mentioned the nobility owed their lives to the people. He thought Kit had matured quite a bit. He decided to speak to Kit as a man now. As descendants of Henry Thomas Church, they had a duty to share. If Kit wanted to renounce his noble title, Richard wasn't going to stop him. But the flames of war were approaching England. While returning from the market, Lily noticed the people seemed more anxious as of late. They discussed things like the suffering economy, hoping it didn't get worse. She'd come across Kit, annoyed at first that he'd been gone for days with no explanation. He congratulated her on getting first place, and submitted her sketchbook simply because he admired the drawings. That's all. She was grateful. He then decided to take her somewhere. They rode the train, eventually arriving at a beautiful location to watch the sunset over the ocean water. It was strange to think for her that the ocean here stretched all the way to Japan. Even though it was far away, her hometown felt close by. Yokohama, the town she was raised in, had beaches just like this. It's a port city visited by ships from all over the world. Kit wanted to go someday. She got excited and began to clamor about all the things she could show him there. She knew he'd love the scenery. She wasn't going back for a while though, because she had so much to do here still. If she did well at the Royal Academy of Arts after she graduated, then maybe she could stay in England forever. Now she was energized. Kit was surprised she wanted to stay here that much. She went on about the Tower of London and the Tate Gallery. She hadn't seen the entire British Museum yet. He'd slowly go forward and face her, then said, "Lily, you're a strong person, far stronger than you think. Follow the path you believe in. Even if it's the long way around, just keep walking straight. I'm sure the paintings you make will move the hearts of people all over the world." Lily felt concerned and asked if something happened. Richard told him Europe was about to split into two. The Balkans were a tinderbox waiting to ignite. The whole world could be engulfed in a great war. Richard was doing everything in his power to extinguish it, but the death of their father might have only fueled it. England might become a battlefield. Richard didn't know if he could take his father's place, but he couldn't turn back now. Kit offered to help, but Richard didn't want half-baked sympathy. Kit's path as a painter would be closed forever, and being the younger brother, if he didn't discard his title, he'd be sent to the battlefront. Kit saw Lily's smile illuminate in his eyes. He had no doubts now, because he met someone who understood his paintings better than anyone. That was enough for him. But there was still one last thing he wanted to paint. He'd come back when he was done. Kit only told her he'd be taking time off from school. She asked what he meant, and he answered to focus on his next piece. He wanted to pour everything he had into it, and he couldn't waste time commuting or attending class. While he began to head back, she could see he was going away right before her eyes. She ran in front to stop him, and Pinky promised, telling him to come back, no matter what. If he disappeared, she wouldn't forgive him. She told him to finish his painting and hurry back, that she was going to do her best too. He just stared at his hand as the breeze blew by and raised it to his lips. On another day, Lily would be invited over to Shin's place to help with dinner. She started hearing some humming and ran over to Sakura. Shin wondered if her voice was coming back. Afterwards, he'd tell Lily how much Sakura has changed. He thought it was all thanks to her, and that she had the power to bring cheer to everyone around her. He told Lily goodnight, and that they should both submit their best for the competition. But getting back to his house, his sister would wait for him with crossed arms. Sakura wanted him to tell Lily how he felt, but right now, he didn't want to distract her. Also, she clearly loved Kit. The days went by. Everyone was hard at work, putting their pieces together. Lily and Shin would walk together, anticipating the day of the competition. Kit never returned to school in the end, and Lily thought he was sure an expert at making people worry. Shin was about to show her a letter, but decided not to, with her calling out to him. At the museum, he told her to go on ahead. He had to stop by the academy. Kit visited Brant, and by his appearance, the professor could tell he hadn't changed his mind. Kit came to tell Brant he was his one and only mentor, and nothing would ever change that. He thanked Brant for all his teachings. Brant pulled out the stopwatch entrusted to him by Henry. It was broken and no longer moved, but he told Kit to repair it with his own hands and start time anew, for his father's sake, too. As the workers hung the paintings in preparation for the exhibition, Lily went to see Peter. His painting was of the Lake District. He wanted to preserve the scenery from their trip as his final memory. She wondered what he meant by final. Dorothy and Joffrey cut in before he could answer. Dorothy showed the painting of her village. It was an elegant piece. Lily could feel Dorothy's love for her hometown from it. However, it was right next to a golden, almost naked statue of a man. It was Joffrey's take on Bacchus. He told her not to be jealous, teasing he knew it was hard to be placed next to perfection. However, she quipped back she just felt embarrassed seeing their works side by side. The gang would then gander at Shin's piece next. It was truly a cut above the rest. It was implemented using Takashi Bori technique, basically a see-through design. Lily suspected the motif was Yamato Takeru, a mythical hero warrior prince. Brant arrived to congratulate them all on their works, noting that Lily's growth particularly astonished him. The friends couldn't believe Lily's work was just a pure white canvas. This reminds me of the Danish artist who did something similar in 2021. He sold the commission to a museum for like $80,000, and it was just a blank canvas titled, "Take the Money and Run." The museum demanded the money back, but his response was, "This is only a piece of art if I don't return the money." Needless to say, they sued him and took it all back. This piece was different, because when light shined, it illuminated the truth of the painting filled with lilies. The thickness of the paint created shadows, a truly groundbreaking work. Lily realized she could paint whatever she wanted without worrying about conventions or forms, all from Kit. Brant laughed, thinking the two really resonated with each other. They all turned and were stunned, seeing the figure painting that depicted Lily. She felt a strange warmth just staring at it, but wondered why she felt uneasy. Lily would then learn here and now from Peter that Kit's father passed away. She got upset. Kit never told her anything. Dorothy shook their professor, asking where Kit was, and hearing he was still at the academy, Lily bolted off to find him. Shin's jaw dropped, hearing he was done with painting. Shin tried to object, but Kit told him war was about to begin. Lily would be stopped by the newspaper boy on her way. The big headline read, "Archduke of Austria and his wife have been assassinated." The people were anxious. Kit told Shin to take care of Lily. Dark clouds floated over London. The Japanese government sent orders earlier that morning for Shin to return home and to protect any nearby compatriots. It was so sudden, he didn't know what to think until Kit shared the news with him. Kit asked Shin to take Lily back to Japan with him. He wanted Shin to protect her. Shin tried to push back that it was Kit's duty, that she was in love with him, but Kit would be overseas and wouldn't return to England for a while. When Lily finally made it to the academy, Kit could only watch her run inside as he was being driven away. She searched desperately for him, but he already resigned himself to his fate. She was only left wondering where he went. Back home, Diana would tell her she received a telegram from Japan. It was her government order to return to Japan immediately. She'd sit with Shin to talk. Since the government was paying their tuition, they had no choice. It was so sudden, she couldn't process it. They had to go home though, and could return once things calmed down. The rain was heavy the next day. Lily sat depressed in her bed. The classroom was dark. With war coming, Brant knew their skills were the least important of all. But there was something they could do. Their brushes could preserve this moment for future generations. He also had another announcement. As of yesterday, Kit voluntarily disenrolled from the academy. Everyone gasped over this. Lily was especially saddened, given this situation. Today's lecture was cancelled. Brant wanted to speak with Lily privately. Two would stare at the large natural portrait before them. Kit painted it when he was 18. His talent astonished Brant, even then. Knowing of the telegram Lily received, he told her the headmaster arranged a ticket for her leave in 10 days. She could retrieve it later. The whole painting was lapis lazuli blue. It was Kit's preferred color when he first enrolled. Discussing the painting he made of her placed in the exhibition, Lily began to tear up, hearing from Brant that her presence changed Kit's heart. He then mentioned the Foreign Office in Whitehall, a place Lily had yet to visit. It had a dignified white exterior with a grand marble staircase inside. The ceiling adorned with personifications of their allies, and one mural depicting peace between England and other nations. In that painting, there was a woman in a kimono who bore a striking resemblance to Lily. He recommended she go see it, but she obviously wasn't in the mood until he mentioned a certain man was still in London, a man who'd be engaging in diplomacy overseas. Lily jolted up. Near the Foreign Office, there was a church with beautiful stained glass windows that same man was very fond of. She thanked Brant and went off. She found the building with thoughts of her need to tell Kit how she felt in her heart. She entered the church. The light inside was beautiful. The flowers placed around were all lilies. And there Kit was, sitting by himself. She sat right beside him. He didn't react at all. She told him she was angry. He asked if he had to tell her everything. She shouted he did, and it was so loud, he plugged his ear. She brought up their promise, wanting him to explain. He told her he quit painting. She couldn't believe it. It had to be a lie. But he already painted the motif he wanted to. That was enough for him. Plus, he had duties to perform. She couldn't accept this. Surely, there were plenty of things left for him to paint. What about the cave lilies? However, he had no time for fairy tales. For him, painting was a waste of time. This made Lily weep. She told him everyone was worried, but now he was going to disappear without even a goodbye? Was their friendship something he could just throw away so easily? She didn't understand why he always decided things on his own without telling anyone. She heard about Henry. She understood he had duties as an aristocrat, but didn't know what that had to do with quitting painting. She wanted the truth. He told her she wouldn't understand. She stood up to reply in anger and sadness. "You're right. I don't understand. I'm just the daughter of a kimono dealer. I'll never understand how an aristocrat feels. I wasn't born with privileges you have. I had to beg my parents to let me study painting. It took receiving money from the government before I could finally come to England. I did all of that just so I could improve my painting. I had no confidence, but I still wanted to paint. I thought if I improved, I could create the paintings I'd always wanted to. That's why I'm here. And when I saw your artwork, I fell in love with painting all over again. It was you who changed me. But now you say you've quit? That it was a waste?" He tried to talk, but she cut him off. "Don't treat me like I'm stupid. Stop playing with my feelings. If you want to go, then go!" She continued to sob, and he just walked right past her. With him leaving her behind, every step he took, she pleaded him to stop. She messed up. That's not what she came here to say. Dorothy waited out in front of their place in the light rain for Lily to return. She served Lily some tea and asked what happened. Lily explained her and Shin's return orders. So many things were happening, and she couldn't process it. She might never see any of them again. It was frightening how easily everything she took for granted could change. Dorothy consoled her, saying no matter where they were, they'd always be best friends, even if the world turned upside down. At school, Lily gave her a goodbye announcement to her classmates. Not just her, though. Brant would call on Peter, too. He undertook the famously difficult King's College transfer exam and passed first try. The other students could hardly believe it. Life is a play whose curtain never falls. Though the stage may change, we must continue to play our parts. Brant continued his wordy ramble, which the students now found endearing in light of recent events. While working on today's assignment, Lily stared up at the sky. She was going to miss it here. The three S's came by to antagonize her, teasing that she must have done some horrible deed to have to return home so early. Lily was amazed at how their insults just rolled off the tongue, but under them, they tell her that her competition piece wasn't bad, and even complimented in ways that didn't sound like compliments at all. Like, it'd be boring not to be able to tease her anymore. You even got first place. I guess anything's possible. Then, they finally handed back the blue paint they stole and dipped out. She'd meet up with the friends at the Old Duchess. Joffrey couldn't believe he and Dorothy were being left behind. Peter would talk about his move to study economics at King's. Kit was the one who inspired him. That night they had the dramatic event. He realized the things you love aren't always what you're meant to do. It took a while, but he found the dream sleeping within him. He was going to travel the world and encounter all sorts of artwork. He wanted to help spread the joy of art to as many people as possible. They were all rooting for him. Joffrey stood up and got pumped from this. His dream was to open a pub where anyone could play music and enjoy liquor from all over the world. Dorothy thought he just wanted to drink all the time. Look at her face. She's so done with him. When it opened, he wanted to put everyone's artwork on display. Joffrey would talk about Kit disappearing again. He wished Kit had said something to them. That's when Lily told him Kit quit painting. Everyone was shocked by the news, especially because Kit said painting was a waste of time. In the midst of Lily breaking down, Catherine finally found her. She'd been looking for her. Catherine dragged Lily off because they had no time to waste. Today was the day Kit left for overseas. He'd be traveling across nations on diplomatic duty. Lily wouldn't look at Catherine straight, but answered that someone of her class had no right to see him. Catherine said, so what? The Lily she knew wouldn't lie to herself using foolish excuses like that. Shin could see the answer was clear though. He told Lily they should go. All the friends wanted her to focus on what she wanted. Catherine shook her, asking where Lily's usual bold attitude was. Hope sparked. She told them she'd go. They'd all go. On the bus ride there, Lily felt she had to apologize to Kit for the horrible things she said. But Catherine told her if she had time to apologize, forget that. Lily needed to tell him how she really felt about him. They spotted him at Pier 3, standing on the deck of the Eleanor. Lily sprinted off, catching his attention by calling him. He wasn't expecting to see her. The friends all let out their frustration, mixed with their longing of friendship. They were going to miss him. As the ship began its departure, Lily ran following, calling him an idiot, and that he was always way too selfish. If he broke their pinky promise, it was 1,000 needles. Reaching the edge of the pier, she failed to get out what she wanted to say again. She broke down. That wasn't what she wanted to tell him. She couldn't understand why he had to go. Ever since that day, searching for cave lilies, she's loved him. 5 years pass. It's the year 1919. In Yokohama, our story moves to the Ichijoin Kimono Boutique, and Lily is hard at work. 1 year after returning to Japan, she received a letter from Dorothy. Dorothy wrote that Kit had been aboard a boat that went missing off the coast of the Indian Ocean. From that day on, all Lily did was pray. She chose to believe Kit was alive. But one day, amid the lingering chill of the early summer rain, she received a letter from Catherine that was accompanied by a list of England's war casualties. Kit was gone from their world, and Lily's feelings were left unsaid. The passage of time soothed the pain to some degree, but she no longer perceived the vivid colors she saw back then. Shin would come to greet her, and she was going to marry him. They were looking to move into the annex. It'd be more than enough space for the two of them. It definitely needed some cleaning though. Shin found an old painting Lily forgot about. He admired the work and thought about turning one of the rooms into an atelier. However, Lily still couldn't paint. When he asked her parents for her hand in marriage, they asked if he was sure, knowing how depressed she's been. He told them he wasn't marrying her out of sympathy and promised to make her happy. They ultimately placed their daughter in his care. With him heading home for the day, Lily just sat against a pillar, thinking about the marriage. She accepted his proposal, but the colors were still gone. Shin came home to Sakura, who could fully speak now. She asked how the annex was. She felt a bit wistful with him leaving their home, and asked about the sculpture he'd been working on. But he'd be leaving it here. He didn't need it anymore. Lately, Sakura's been thinking about the accident that took their mother's life. Shin was glad her voice recovered. It meant she was moving forward. She then handed him a letter. It was his acceptance to studying abroad in Italy. He thought it was ironic for him to get accepted now, after all this time. Back then, he believed he could accomplish anything, like the hero of an adventure novel. But now, that was all just a foolish dream. Sakura stood in his way, saying this was his chance to finally go to Italy. She was sure Lily would understand. Shin told his sister she didn't need to worry. He was grateful to Lily. It was thanks to her he gave it his all in England. Now it was his turn to be there for her. On another day, Lily received a letter from Catherine. Her store was doing well, and lately she's begun creating her own designs. She was even opening a branch in Paris soon. At the same time, a steamboat arrived from England. Shin sighed, hoping for something more for some reason. Taking his leave, he spotted a slender figure with blonde hair. He chased after, hoping to find out it was Kit. But the man disappeared. Finishing her delivery work, Lily viewed the clouds and sighed. She remembered Big Ben and the National Gallery, the Field of Lilies, all sorts of things from her short time in England. Shin scared her. She was too lost in her thoughts. She wondered if he was staring at her blank face. He told her he wasn't, but he liked every face she made. He was about to tell her he might have found Kit, but decided not to. She wondered if everyone back in England would be surprised to find out they were getting married, and thanked him for always being by her side. Walking the streets together, Lily noticed it was livelier than usual. There was a fireworks show going on tonight. A vendor selling record players put on a particular song, the very one Joffrey was playing the night all the friends had just gotten back together. She could see Kit's face so vividly. She felt so nostalgic. She got absorbed. The two went into a shop where Shin was looking to buy a portrait frame for one of Lily's paintings. He'd fixate on a mini sculpture of Michelangelo's Pieta, then found Lily backing away from something. It was a portrait of a woman who looked like her with a lily on her head. When asked, the merchant explained that a blonde foreign man brought it here. Shin asked where he was going, but the merchant had no idea. The merchant's wife then came in, and she gushed over the foreign man's hair shine like silk and eyes like blue glassware. She also didn't know where the man was either. The only word he understood was Yokohama. Lily's vision started to go blurry, and she collapsed right in the shop. Shin called her over and over, but she wouldn't respond. Back at Shin's home, Lily lied asleep with visions of Kit in her dreams, and also the last things she said to him. She began to cry before waking up to Sakura. Waiting in their home, she remembered the painting from the shop, the nostalgic colors, the brushwork, and the dress. But she couldn't believe it. It had to be a mistake. Maybe this was all a coincidence. No, she'd never mistake it for someone else's work. It was unmistakably Kit's. She got so frustrated, she bumped her head in the cabinet behind her, and an envelope from the Ministry of Education fell. Seeing it was addressed to Shin, she opened it up and saw his acceptance to study in Italy. She then unveiled his unfinished sculpture. Hurriedly, she asked Sakura where Shin was and took a car to go to him. He told her he saw Kit, or someone who resembled him at the harbor this afternoon. He wanted to tell Lily, but he didn't see the man's face clearly. And then, with that painting, there was no mistaking it. Kit could be alive and here in Yokohama right now. Shin got up and told her they should look for him together. Lily remembered telling Kit about her hometown at the beach. He told her then that he wanted to come here someday. She decided to search as well. They had nothing to lose. They split up as the fireworks burst in the sky. Lily would trip near the pier, so embarrassed she wanted to die. A slim man walked by and then came back over, casually saying, "That was quite a fall. Are you hurt?" She told him she was fine, but the voice was familiar. She looked up to see Kit. Leaning down to hold out his hand, he told her, "I finally found you." They had a small reunion before Lily smacked him, shouting he was an idiot. She couldn't believe his only response to things was, "Long time no see." She was so convinced he'd been dead up till now. They heard his boat sunk, and all assumed he was dead. She wasn't going to accept it and say, "Nice to see you." He tried to calm her down. Big mistake. She smacked him as the fireworks boomed. With double handprints on his face, he explained after leaving England, he traveled nation to nation as a diplomatic assistant. When the fighting eased up, he thought he could finally head home, but their boat got caught in a typhoon. Next thing he knew, he washed up on a beach. He was injured all over, but saw enemy flags, so he had no choice but to flee the jungle. He wandered for days until he stumbled on a village, but of course he couldn't speak their language. He got bitten by a poisonous snake, caught an infectious disease. It was one thing after another. He was amazed he was still alive, eventually managing to sneak on a mail boat bound for England a month ago. So in fact, no one knew he was still alive. Getting lucky was the only reason he survived. Shin would eventually stumble upon the two, and he saw Lily laughing for the first time in a while. He ran right over to give Kit a hug. They'd all catch up, and eventually, Lily and Shin brought up their wedding. It was awkward for a moment, but Kit congratulated them. He couldn't stay long though. The boat he snuck on only stopped here to resupply. Getting up, his stomach growled loudly. He hadn't eaten all day. Shin decided to run off, leaving the two behind to get Kit some food. Alone together, Lily brought up the painting he made in the shop. He apparently painted it while he was traveling. He then handed her his sketchbook containing all the things he drew during his travels. She began to weep, seeing he finally found it, a cave where white lilies grew. He bent down by her side and told her to stop crying. He wanted to see more of her work. The boat would make its departure, and the two saw him off, having no idea in his hand was a ticket for Lily he had gotten for her. If things had gone differently, he would have taken her with him. He let it go, and it flew away in the wind. Back home, Lily stared at the sketch of the cave lilies. Shin stared at his unfinished sculpture of the Pieta. The final page of the book flipped over, and behind the lilies read, "I'll take you there one day. Don't forget the blue paint." Lily began to set up her art station, pulling out the blue paint Kit had lent her earlier. She hadn't forgotten the smell. Her heart was thumping. The pigment spread across the canvas, awakening feelings she'd shut away. She really did love to paint. In the morning, her parents were nervously listening in. They hadn't heard anything from their daughter at all. Entering, they found Lily passed out on the floor, her painting nearly finished. Coming to her side, they continuously called her name, only to get surprised with her stomach growling. She was so hungry. Her mother began to hound her to get up because it was the afternoon already, while her father was glad she was painting again. Scarfing down her food rapidly, Lily asked for more. Her mother told her there was no more, and asked what kind of bride-to-be eats 3 servings of rice. While she went to go put the dishes away, the parents could see Lily was bright, kind of like right before she spoke of going to England. At the Kobayakawa house, Sakura could hear the serious pounding of sculpture work. Shin was giving his current piece his all. In front of her canvas, Lily called for her memories to return, and everything started coming back to her. All the things that gave her inspiration. She'd land in the field of lilies where Kit was painting. Lily tried to move towards, but never reaching him. She channeled her current feelings into the tip of her brush to finish. She painted non-stop. No one was going to stop her. Kit, meanwhile, returned to England and got a good grasp of the beautiful landscape. By the time Lily finished, she realized the sky over the clouds was a little too big. With her skills having somewhat declined, Brant surely would have scolded her like, "Miss Ichijoin, you call this a painting?" Either way, this is who she was now. Looking through Kit's sketchbook, Lily thought she was lagging behind. Kit's always been ahead, so far that she could never catch him. She worked with all her might just to close the distance, but now, once again, he's moved so far ahead. It hurt. She just wanted to improve. She wanted to ride side by side with him. Lily would call out Shin to meet with her, and he was surprised to hear she'd been painting again. It was noticeably worse, but she was okay with that. She wanted to paint and paint and paint and become a better painter than before. Even she couldn't believe how much she loved painting. Her bright smile caused Shin to blush. She thought he was talented as well and apologized for looking at his study abroad letter without permission. She told him to go to Italy. She didn't want him to give up on his art because she loved it, seeing her painting for himself. He called it a bit crude, but could tell it was definitely her work. She told him she worked so hard, she forgot to breathe, and he thought it was just like that time at the zoo. She then told him she didn't think she could get married feeling like this. She was afraid she'd end up hating herself for it one day. He actually felt the same. He was going to Italy. He told her to go to England. Her desire for it was written in her painting. He was going to travel freely to wherever he wanted to sculpt. So it only made sense that she return to the landscape she wanted to paint and to be true to herself, and that when she got there, Kit would be waiting for her. At this moment, Lily finally understood. For her, to paint was to live and also to love. Soon after, the two would apologize to her parents for calling off the wedding. Lily's mother was astonished, but the father understood. The two decided to pursue their dreams. He'd only allow Lily to go so long as she could provide a valid reason for her mother to accept. Lily understood. She could never thank the both of them enough for all they've done to raise her. But she'd never be able to abandon painting. That's why she decided to value both of those things. This surprised her folks. She told them she was going to inherit the kimono boutique by opening a branch in England and spread the reputation of Ichijoin kimonos around the world. With her father chuckling, the mother told him this was serious. She accepted Lily's request, but as both a painter and kimono dealer, she needed to aim to be the world's best, but also to lead the happiest life in the world. Lily was thankful for the both of them, and thus, Lily would admire the sea, excited to prepare her return to England. Shin rowed his boat, excited to head to Italy. 1 year later, Lily finally made it back to where she wanted to be. Catherine would flag her down, and the two girls hugged it out. It had been so long, but Catherine saved the most prominent space in her store for her. Staring at the River Thames, Lily remembered her first instance meeting Kit here. Catherine broke her daydream to explain he's left the country. Lily blushed and turned away, playing coy that she wasn't thinking about him right now. He was on the other side of the world. While he continued his travels, Lily caught up with Diana, Professor Brant, and Dorothy and her children. Where Shin was hard at work sculpting, he'd happily get a visit from Peter. Lily eventually opened up her family's kimono boutique in one of Catherine's stores. Another 6 months after, Lily made her way to the beach, the same one Kit took her to. While she went to work, she sensed him behind her and casually said, "You certainly had a long trip, Kit." She asked how it was, and he answered that no matter where you go, the wind blows to some degree. She expected this kind of short answer from him. That's how things were. She then went on about how she was painting again, and as always, the more she painted, the more she was confounded by the things she lacked. But she was having fun. The two walked ashore together as Kit explained, even painting all over the world, something was missing. Then one day, it hit. It's because that stubborn, loud-mouthed, black-haired crybaby with an enormous appetite isn't here. She gasped. He turned back to her face and said, "Lily, without you, every scene is a bore." She then blushed, responded that without him, the world seemed faded, a hazy world without color or light. But then, seeing his art brought back every shade. She tried to get all the words out, and he'd suddenly kiss her. She had no words, and then they'd observe a beautiful rainbow uncovered from the clouds. Lily supposed rainbows to be a curious thing. She asked why all its colors appeared. Kit answered that sunlight dispersed when it passed through raindrops. Like a prism, he thought, just like her. Just by being there, a rainbow bathes ordinary scenery in extraordinary hues. He called Lily a rainbow. Just by being there, the world overflowed with color. The color he always lacked was her. Tears dripped from her face. She told him she felt this way for a long time. Any scenery she saw with him was filled with endless color, and no amount of pigments could capture them all. She then stood on her tippy toes to give him a kiss of her own. 2 years later, at Joffrey's pub, we hear him whistling, and he opened shop for another day. Peter returned to England, stopping by Dorothy carrying her children, offering to give them a lift. They'd make it to Joffrey's place, where he admired all the works he collected since his days at the academy. Shin was there as well, but Lily and Kit weren't coming this time around because they were in Asia. Lily stared in awe at the cave filled with lilies. Kit caught up with and grabbed her hand. As he was painting, she smiled at him, and a gust blew a flurry of petals upward, forming the inspiration he needed for his latest work. Wow. I'm pretty satisfied with that ending for the most part. It's too bad Joffrey and Dorothy didn't get together, but that's just how it goes, right? This is definitely one of the better shoujos thematically and motif-wise that's come out in a while. I think the main theme is the pursuit of one's personal dreams despite emotional or social obstacles. Trust me, I've had a lot of barriers to get through in my own personal life, but here I am, working my dream being a full-time YouTuber. Here are some additional themes I think were big though. The first hard-hitting theme was in episode 2, where Professor Brant crushed Lily by saying her work was good and incredibly by the books. Great for teaching children, but not for an artist. A lot of people who never reach the pinnacle but strive for it, by coming from an environment where perhaps they were the best, and then move to a place where competition is more fierce, have this happen to them. It's like being a big fish in a small pond. Move to a bigger pond like the ocean, and you'll probably get eaten by a shark or a whale. A run-of-the-mill straight-A student gets crushed by an innovative genius like Kit, and his genius actually ties into his own personal set of problems, revealed in episode 9. This was the episode Peter crashed out from feeling inadequate to Kit. And remember what Kit told him? Peter was blaming Kit for his own inability to improve his technique, and basically called Kit a silver-spooned brat born with talent. Kit never saw it that way though. He has the type of personality true geniuses and true performers exhibit at the pinnacle. He doesn't necessarily care about being number one, and in fact, he's never thought his own paintings were any good. He was so desperate to paint to fulfill something that would satisfy himself. I think this kind of desperation is powerful, and most people could use a driver like this to move forward in their own dream goals. Another thing I wanted to touch on was in episode 10, where Shin first tells Lily he wants to go to Italy to study Michelangelo's work. Lily told him curiosity killed the cat, and quite honestly, that kind of in-the-box thinking destroys creative abilities. It's why I myself am always looking for great stories, not just limited to anime and manhwa, but movies, and a lot of times, video games. You hear it a lot in the anime I cover. It's clear video games have inspired me a lot. There are peak S-tier stories that resonate with me and inspire me to create to this day. Some include Fire Emblem, The Sacred Stones being my favorite, Omori, I played that just last year, and right now, I'm live streaming Limbus Company weekly, searching for more creative work inspiration. In the same episode, Catherine apologized for bullying Lily and rediscovered her love for fashion. Being a nobleman's daughter, she's had a lot of expectations placed on her. Again, these are a restricting bind that prevent a person from self-actualization and reaching the best they could be. Even though Lily was almost done painting Catherine's portrait, Catherine had her start over because she was wearing the dress that was a fake lower version of the Silver Lily dress. Catherine giving up the Silver Lily and restarting the portrait are a vital symbol to her letting go of the expectations put on her and moving towards self-actualization, chasing things that she loves. Now, episode 16 features a really emotionally charged moment where Lily explodes all of her inadequacies onto Kit when she meant to tell him she loved him. It was pretty important for the story to go this way, even up to the point where she couldn't say how she felt about him when he left on the boat. What are you supposed to take away from this? In my opinion, the fact that once you say something, you can't take it back. It doesn't matter how many apologies you make. So you better be careful. If she could have just stayed focused on what she needed to say to the man who was leaving for years, they might have had a better note to leave on. There are a few more messages, like the symbolism of both Lily and Catherine's short hair, but I don't want to make this stretch out any longer. Kit making it to Lily was of course a complete stroke of luck, and the story could have ended with him dead and still have been reasonable, even though I prefer they be together. But what do you guys think? I'd love to hear your thoughts, and if this personally resonated with you at all. Subscribe for more content, but for now, watch this next video. It's me, Comfy T. I'll see you all in the next one.